All right. Hello, everyone. Our Hacking HR global community. If that music doesn't get you hype and then create some bit of like somber slash just calm towards the end, I don't know what will. So, welcome. I'm Frank Gonzalez. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a people and culture leader with 2 decades of cross industry experiences in various organizations around inclusive design, inclusive initiatives, talent, and organizational development. I'm a father, I'm a husband, again, serving as your moderator today, but you all did not sign up to meet me. We'll be bringing up our panelists very shortly. I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Hacking HR community, to our panelists, our wonderful panelists that are coming up shortly, and to you all, audience members, with so many distractions, so many busy work, personally and professionally, taking the time for yourself to just pause and fill in your cup with some of the information and awesome strategy from this week's summit. So our Total Rewards and Global Mobility Strategy Summit, I think it's always timely, but especially during the time now. So please interact, connect as much as possible. Connections are so important, so valuable. React, get some emojis, get the energy going, and certainly please ask some questions in the chat. I'll do my best to kind of curate that, weave it in, and then potentially have some time at the end. Today, we are focusing on personalized and flexible benefits strategy. But so without further ado, please, let's bring our wonderful panelists up to the stage. Yes. Oh my gosh, y'all are looking amazing. Energy. I'm just like feeling off of you all's wonderful smiles and energy is projecting virtually onto the camera and on here. So I hope our audience is feeling that today. A little virtual round of applause. Thank you all for being here today. So let's just get started. We always run out of time with these things. So let's prime it up a little bit. And I'm gonna actually go clockwise based on what I see on my virtual camera. So Aaron, that's you. You're gonna kick us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and why you said yes to this subject. Why did you say yes? And why is this so important for you and the time that we have going on now?
Well, first off, my name's Aaron Hoosier. I am crazy about all things HR, but specifically obsessed over benefits. So obviously this is near and dear to my heart. I don't know if I love the benefits more than I love the negotiation process, but that's another story, right? So the real reason why I'm here today is to really, push down your all's throats that when you're at the negotiation table, even when it's cafeteria style benefits, that we are trying to get, number one, the best value we possibly can. Number one, the easiest way to show a return on your investment 100% is to make sure you get the very best deal. You've got to tell people to sharpen your pencil, go back to the table. Don't take that first offer that they send you because yes, it looks great, but this is when I need you guys to start having a poker face and act very unimpressed, even if it's the best thing you've ever had in your life. Because at the end of the day, you owe it to you people to make sure that the benefits you're bringing to them are the most affordable. So that way they're not one of the first things to be dropped. Because nothing hurts more than a benefit that everybody loves to suddenly have to have a hard conversation about why it's not being offered 2-3 years down the line. So I want you guys to always think about that first and foremost. And then the other reason is nothing demotivates people more than having a benefit that doesn't make sense. So the other topic that I really want to hone in on today is that equity doesn't mean identical, and that each individual area, and as we get more into global markets and more into different regions, they're going to need different things. So what matters to a blue collar worker in Alexandria, Louisiana isn't going to hit as much to the same executive level person based in Hong Kong. So that's just something to think about. Anyway, thank y'all so much. I look forward to being here and sharing what I know, but most importantly, learning things today.
I think I'm next on the clockwise, right, Doctor? Okay. My name is Mandy Kuchai. Thank you, and that's a hard one to follow. I am currently the VP of People at the Fresh Perspective Group, which is a startup in the social good, tech for social good space. But I've spent the last 15, 16 years in HR, human resources, people operations, often as a team of one or a small but mighty team, reporting into COOs, CEOs, CFOs. So I really love sitting at that intersection between, dollars and FTEs and return on investment and humans and heartbeats. And how do we align our benefit offerings to our values and to our desired culture to help sort of prioritize, but also focus. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about how we find that sustainability within flexibility, within sort of desired cultural state, and just really thrilled to be here. So thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Well, my name is Sheila Kruger. I'm based in Phoenix. I'm currently consulting with benefits related startups. And prior to that, I had 20 years, maybe a little more than that, in the TER total rewards space, most recently at Zoom as their head of global benefits. Why did I say yes? Huge shout out to Hacking HR. These are the seminars that I enjoyed so much when I was still practicing and learned so much. And the networking, I think, is amazing as well. I know there's probably a huge conversation happening in the comments. And take advantage of all those LinkedIn posts and all that great stuff, because it really makes a big difference. But this particular topic is really one that is near and dear to me because, the budgets kind of go like this. And so I think it's always been really interesting to listen to the employees and find out what the benefits are that they're looking to get, instead of just talking to, your team and the finance team and the C-suite and having them guess or pick what is going in the package based on the budget. So for me, it's really a lot of listening and then being able to put together the best possible package that you can. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra Rose, and I feel so fortunate to be on this panel with these experts. I have nearly 20 years as well, Sheila, of HR experience, and I have a deep expertise and passion for total rewards, especially benefits, because if you think about it, it's really the most tangible thing to reward your employees with. And so when employees are having their highest highs and their lowest lows, it's really the compensation and benefits that carry them through. So I wanted to join. I said yes, because I want to share some of the tools that I've used to be able to leverage those dollars to make sure they're translating into the best employee value proposition any company can give. Because when an employee feels supported, that's when you know you've done a great job.
Last but not least, my name is Jamie Conrad. I'm the VP of People and HR at HG Insights, formerly with Trust Radius and acquired last week by HG Insights. So excited to be part of that go forward team. Benefits has always been where I've leaned into in my HR career in the past, very passionately. I'm one of those nerdy, we must fix our US healthcare system kind of people. And so the first way to do that is benefits at the employer level and education associated with that. My why for this specific panel is around the idea that we're at this turning point right now where we have the opportunity to have our benefits and total rewards programs impacted by AI, just like every other aspect of the workplace. And as HR professionals, we finally have some access to those tools that can help us lean into human-centered design opportunities and be successful doing so that we can personalize some of the experiences that our employees have. And that is the driver of your culture. That is the baseline of your core values, and how you go about operationalizing those as part of your benefits offering and experience at the employee level can make all the difference in the world, from how people feel about going to work and the experience that they have and how supported they feel for success. So looking forward to talking about some of those emerging technologies and the ways that we can utilize them for our employees.
Whew, okay. I just need to take a moment. I don't know about the audience, but I need to take a moment because it's fire already. Oh my gosh. I mean, personally, I'm going through a roller coaster of emotions right now, just drawing me in from negotiating at the table, really, just like that. And I love it. And community and the connections and the support, and it's most tangible, and rethinking and thinking down the line and so many different things. I was taking notes here and I almost forgot that I was moderating. Let me just put it that way. I was like, okay, like what's next? But we have a job to do. So Jamie, I like to stick with you. So you won't go last this time, and anyone else just build on what Jamie says. But we talk about just personalized and flexible benefit strategies. So what does that really look like? What does that really mean, both for your organization, organizations that you've been with, organizations you've worked with, but maybe even on a personal level? Because I think you and many of the panelists have already talked about that personalization, that human side of it.
Yeah, so I think when I think about flexibility and benefits, it really boils down to autonomy. And again, those human-centered design principles. So I want my employees to be part of the conversation first and foremost. I want to hear from them the things that are important. And so whether that's benefits surveys, or talking to my culture committee or my employee engagement committee and sourcing what those things look like. That's where I start. I want to know. I'm not going to build a program based off of what the board thinks I should or my executives think I should. I want to build a program that's going to be meaningful to the employees, that the majority of the employees that it's impacting. And so I start with, tell me what's important to you. And then work around that to build the strategy and offer the benefits that are important. And some of the things that come up in that are, like, for instance, at Trust Radius, we had a bunch of new parents or first-time parents. We had a large parental group to begin with, and then all of these leave of absences started happening for new babies. And so instead of providing lifestyle benefits around things that were outside of that, I leaned into it. They were coming to me. I don't even know how much screen time my kids are supposed to have. I don't even know, some of those kind of things. And so that's where we started to craft some of our wellness offerings, and lifestyle opportunities were around that. So I think flexibility really means to understand what your people need and want, and build around it. That's empathy in action, right? When we let people choose what supports their well-being, and showing that we trust them to make the decisions that are best for them.
I love that, Jamie. Empathy in action. That goes on a t-shirt and Hacking HR on the back. Just to build on that, when we think about core benefits, right? People want to make sure that if there's a health emergency, I'm covered. Financially, how am I actually going to save for retirement or pay for the things that are happening in my life now? And these are the traditional benefits that aren't going anywhere. So, let's rest assured there. But what I would say is the most evolved way of thinking of it is, how do I step out of that for my employee population? We've all worked in different organizations where it could be 50 employees or 50,000 employees. And to Aaron's point around someone who is in the South or the Northeast may want different things. And also we're talking about different stages of life. I don't know if anyone notices this, but Gen Alpha, the newest generation, they're starting to become interns. We can almost technically have 6 generations of people in a workplace. These are people who want completely different things because they're at different life stages. And so our employee benefits can no longer remain those traditional things and just hope that everyone goes through as a cohort. We really have to think through, what do people value? Because when you ask an employee to come work for you, when you ask them to stay, you want to make sure that you can, for the most part, orient on their values. You're never going to meet every need. That if that company exists let me know where you are. But what you can do is put frameworks together and really truly think about what serves the employees that you have today and the employees that you want in your doors tomorrow. And that's how you build your flexible benefits.
I love
Awesome.
that. Oh, sorry. Go, Sheila.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I also love that. So I feel like ditto. And then, so one of the things that you asked, Frank, was about, what do core benefits look like? And I think traditionally that's been medical, dental, vision. Maybe that's it. And some insurances. Those were kind of the flexible parts, right, of your benefits. Maybe you got some short-term disability or you could buy it, those kinds of things. My kind of personal brand in this role has always been that, benefits should be based on the pillars of wellness. It's not just about being physically healthy. I always think that mental health should be part of that, core benefits. It's just really important that we think about the whole employee and not just the physical side, because I do think we've ignored the mental side for so long, which is why I think, financial counseling, financial wellness, so important, all those things as well. And then I think, again, just mirroring what's been said already is listening to the employees. So at Zoom, we did a cohort survey, which was amazing. The data was great. The comments were even better because people were very specific about, this is great. I love that you're doing this. And yeah, I'm so happy that I work for a company where there's fertility benefits, but I already had my kids. What do I get? Right. So that's kind of where, as Erin said, that equity isn't everything the same, because I want a different set of benefits than Jamie does. There's just no two ways about it. There's probably not, very few people out there who want the same benefits as the person sitting next to them. So it's just so important for us to listen and talk about, how we can do that as employers.
Yeah. There were so many things that have already been said that I just love around like co-creating with your employees. What do they want? Cassandra, I think you said something around like different lifestyles, and Sheila, you reiterated like we're at a stage now where there are a lot of folks needing a lot of flexibility or difference, which is why I love starting with not only the values or the needs of your employee base, which is super important and critical as a voice in that construction of your benefit offerings, but also like what are the stated values of the organization? Because folks have already signed up and signed into that, right? You're getting people coming to your organization because they see your shiny website or all the things you say you will do. And if there is a disconnect between how you talk about yourself and what you offer internally, there's going to be that cognitive dissonance that is like very problematic. And it's a huge reason people leave or they don't stay or they get frustrated because you say you value learning or growth mindsets, but you don't offer a professional development budget, or you say you value inclusion and equity and diversity, but you don't have sort of like parental leave for either parent or both parents or fertility benefits. Like, how are you ensuring that there's alignment between what you say your values are and what you're putting in practice? And I think that creates the integrity that employees want right now. And that also affords some flexibility if you're aligning those benefits to those values, but there's still movement within that. I think in today's world where we're virtual and remote and global, if you're connecting your benefits to your value and allowing folks to use it in a way that still supports their lived experience and their needs, that can offer some like sustainability while still offering flexibility. And I think that's really important.
And then to kind of piggyback off of all of this, like I said, I'm going to be pushing return on investments. I want you guys to really concentrate on that, because this is where the magic really happens. Once we get all those things aligned and we have benefits that make sense for people, ideally in year one, at the end of year one, or possibly where I've typically seen it really kind of come together is year two, where we actually have a longer data point, that you'll see the spend rate in your major insurance, which, let's be honest, between wages and insurance, that's our biggest cost factor. That's what's driving everything. That's when the money really starts to matter. And if you can get that spin rate down in renewals, you have a much stronger case when you're going in there and you're getting the real beast addressed, because there should be a correlation between the spending and what you're offering. And somehow, ideally, what you'll see is that you'll see less spin rate on mental health services, less spin rate on, I hate to say it, but sudden acute things coming up, because unfortunately, stress can really deteriorate your health. And you start to remove some of those barriers that stress people out. Like, I'll be honest with you. In my 30s, my biggest stressor was trying to figure out how to get adult health care for a family member that was passing. So, and now in my 40s, that's a different conversation. My biggest concern right now is trying to figure out, hey, what are these other fun benefits that I can get at this point? So we change throughout the life cycle of our of who we are as employees, but ultimately, no matter where you are in the life cycle, if you have a good benefit mix, it should somehow tie back to what's actually being spent long term. Does that make sense?
Oh, audience, I hope you are getting so much here. Our panelists are covering a wide gambit of so many different experiences and really sharing a bit of their own personal experiences, not just organizationally. If I were to, there's been so many different things there. When I look at there's an inclusive model, the diversity wheel that I often refer to in equity inclusion, but it actually, if you look at it, demographics and personality are in the middle. But what you all are talking about, the well-being and the wholeness of someone personally or as a team organizationally, is actually in there. But we don't often look at that. We focus so much, both stateside and sometimes, depending on the geographic part of it, on demographics only. But what y'all are talking about is this wholeness. And I also heard definitely multiple generations in the workforce. And I can definitely relate to that. And I'm sure our audience can too. In my 20s, I just wanted to get paid, and I was probably declining all the benefits, and I just wanted to make sure you got me a gym membership and stay fit and have some flexibility. But as I start to accumulate experiences, caring for family members, building my own family, having these different things, and I almost feel like we have this sense of need to mentor our up and coming workforce and just have those things either available, and so they understand that you may not need it now. I'm not listening to you, but you may need this later. And it's balancing the needs and then the cost and all these different things, and just the humanity piece of it. If I were to oversimplify our humanity, it's this CAR or CAB acronym we can use. So competency, or the need to be stimulated and professionally grow. Autonomy and flexibility is the A, and then R or B is sense of connection, belonging, or relatedness, both with other people in the organization, but the organization themselves. And I think you all said some of those things too. I'm reading all these benefits, and I go on there, and research tells us, okay, it's one thing to have a benefit, but it also needs to be modeled. So are we actually modeling the usage of those benefits? And I can't believe we're already at the halfway mark. I tell you, these things always go so quickly and so full of just so much information. And hopefully, audience, you all can, take those notes, connect with these panelists, but also listen to the playback. I'd love us to shift into this measurement of success or impact, right? So you all gave a lot of different examples, both in your personal and your organizations, but utilizing, data or measure of success. How do we make this case? And I see we're kind of going in the clockwise, counterclockwise. So I was right in the middle of the clock. Sheila, I'd love to come with you first, and panelists build upon any of that.
Sure. Great. Thank you. I I love this question because it's always been a struggle, and I've mostly worked in service industries, not manufacturing or blue collar. And so I've always found it kind of difficult to find that perfect piece of data that says, ever since we implemented this wellness program, we've made 85 more widgets an hour than we did before, and then the HR team can all cheer. And then, the C-suite gives you more money. And then you wake up from that dream. And you're faced with, how do I really know what am I doing, or how am I doing with my folks? And so for me, part of it was using, and I was lucky enough, especially at Zoom, to be able to have access to all of our plan data, health plan data. And so you can see trends, and you can see what's happening with people, and where are there places that you can put money that might be really, really beneficial for your employees. So whether that's, fertility, or, obesity, or mental health, or whatever that is, you should be able to see that in your claims data, right? And be able to help steer people to the solutions that they want. I think the other thing is that it's really important to, again, it's always all about listening for me. So how do you know it's working? If you can't collect widget data, I think a lot of it is just doing those surveys, talking to people. I mentioned the cohort survey in the comments. To me, that just meant, we could probably do away with the cohort, although the finance people love the hard numbers. But the comments mean maybe we can just do focus groups. Maybe we just talk to a wide spread of people and find out what is it that we really want. And then the third thing I want to talk to about this is, I am so with you, Erin, on ROI. It's so important. I think it's very hard to show. It's very hard to show. And so I always talk about the second ROI, which for me is return on individuals. And so let's talk about and tell stories about how the benefits that we've procured have helped our employees. And we don't have to violate HIPAA to do that. You can certainly talk to your C-suite about, hey, we added this fertility benefit, and, I've gotten an email from so-and-so because they were able to get a surrogate. They're now on their second surrogacy with us and this program, and it's really been able to help them build a family. They're never going to leave. They're never going to leave because we've given them the family that they could not have otherwise. So I just think it's really important to make sure you're able to translate some of those stories into that ROI, return on individual, as you talk about this with your C-suite.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take return on individuals and run with it, Sheila. Thank you so much for that today. And building on that idea of, employee loyalty, MetLife put out a study last year that 61% of employees who are satisfied with their benefits say that they feel more loyal to their employer, that flexibility in benefits is correlated in their mind and shown statistically to impact data related to higher engagement levels, lower turnover, increased utilization of preventative care, which, going back to your claims data, can really drive your claims costs down. And so, if you haven't checked out that study from MetLife last year, I'd highly encourage it. I'm just going to say +1, and the key for me has always been to ask in the exit interviews at least one question around benefits, utilization, and perspective. That exit interview data can be really helpful in shaping and getting the information that people may not be willing to share in some of those surveys.
And Jamie, the same MetLife, I had the same survey, a stat there around 82% of employees said it was important in that study that their benefits reflect their values and lifestyle, which again doesn't mean we need to do everything for everyone, but we need to allow some flexibility for difference in lifestyle and stage of life and need. I love return on individual, Sheila, and I think there's important piece there on storytelling with your C-suite too. How do you take the data? I've been in fully insured, self-funded. If you have good brokers, you should be able to get good data on a quarterly basis around, again, claims utilization plan, where folks are using, what they're using, that you can take. But I think the storytelling piece for the folks making decisions is really important. When I worked at a college, we had some of those high performers. I mean, we didn't pay a lot. We weren't able to do a ton. We were very resource strapped, but they were staying because of our tuition reimbursement benefit. And they had kids coming up on college age, right? So it's like that storytelling piece is important. So to Erin's point, when you get to the stage of, oh no, we might need to cut a benefit, and they're like, well, this tuition reimbursement one is really expensive. Like, sure, but we're going to lose high performers. So there is a cost to cutting that. There's not just a savings. And so how do we tell that story to the people making decisions, I think is really important. And to Jamie's point, like exit interview, claim data, but also employee engagement data. If anyone's doing like pulse surveys or continuous employee engagement surveys through either a tool like Lattice or Culture Amp, like baking in some of those questions around total comp, benefits, and compensation can be really, really helpful.
So another thing too, to kind of look at, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So what I love
Sorry.
about
Another thing that you can, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Sorry, Erin and I are going to do a two-parter, you'll see. So what I love about all this, a lot of people may be asking, how do I storytell? Because Sheila, Mandy, and Jamie, that's exactly what you need to be able to do. So there's loud data and then there's silent data. Your loud data is the survey. It is the exit interview. It is all of these different things. But the silent data are your leave of absences, your promotions, the people who are rising in your environment, in your organization. Look at what their programs look like. Did they take part? Did they show up to an L&D, offering? Did they participate in your 401k? Because that's how you can show, even if that person may never come up to me. I always call benefits the pipes of the organization. Very rarely do you go into your bathroom and you flush a toilet and you're like, toilet, thank you so much for flushing. I know this is flush number 256, right? So happy that you're working. You're not going to do that because you expect it to work. And that's our job as total rewards professionals, to make it work for you. When you go to the doctor and they take your insurance card and they take your copay and it's everything you expected, I don't expect you to rush back to me. But when that person gets promoted 3 years from now and I can showcase, look at all the different benefit programs that we put in place. And look at that, the majority of people who stayed with us for 3 years, who've been promoted, who come back after they've been out on a leave of absence and stay for over a year. These are the programs that they're involved in. You can show the ROI, both in investment and individual. Sheila, I'm taking that for the rest of my career. And then now I hand it over to my co-host, Erin.
Well, here's the good news. You and I are on the same page because you brought up a point that I was going to bring up. So I love the synergy. Another thing to kind of look at too is what it actually brings into the organization. I'm going to give you a very anecdotal, real world example. I worked at the city of Lamarck. Before I said municipalities aren't necessarily where I want to take the rest of my career. I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but when I went into the municipality, we were a small municipality outside the city of Houston, competing with a lot of different other bigger municipalities. So we realized that we were never going to be able to beat them on price, but we could beat them on what we offer our employees, what we offered our police force. And that's where we won. We went from a 20-year trend, 52% staffed, 20-year trend to 99% staffed. I was one person away from being 100% staffed. And the only reason why it wasn't filled was because the person was on leave. So there's real world examples of how a good benefit mix can have really earth-shattering fundamental changes in your organization, not only keeping people, but drawing people into you too. Because once you get them with great benefits, to everyone's point, it really gives them a reason to stay. And that's why another great data point is, why are you staying? Knowing that and being able to have the majority of your stay interviews result back to the benefits that you're offering helps you to have like a very secret weapon at those meetings when people are discussing, well, what's the value in something?
Whew. Okay. Team, I'm looking at the comments here, and a lot of affirmations. Jacqueline, Judith, Allison, storytelling. Yes. Actions speak louder than words. Kathy, create the virtuous cycle. ROI. Oh my gosh, so many different affirmations in the chat. So it's definitely resonating. And again, I encourage you all to connect with these panelists. Let's keep this conversation going. Apparently, we're going to be offered a part 2 as well. Aaron and Cassandra, that's going to be a part 2 right there. So I love it. Want to make a quick announcement. And panelists, as I am making that announcement, I want you to think about this last question. In retrospect, what would have been something that would have been just, very memorable, very, very life-changing for you in retrospect, that would have been nice to have? But also, if you'd like, maybe futuristic, what is some sort of game-changing initiative or program or platform that our audience should be kind of looking out for when we talk about these things? And so think about that. And I'm going to start off with you, Mandy, when we come and kind of popcorn around and bring us home. But the announcement is actually next week in San Diego, California, here in the U.S., happening on June 30th. Over 100 HR leaders will be joining the Hacking HR team. So if you're out there for any reason, we'll be having the Hacking HR Roadshow going on. So definitely encourage you all to come by, and our team will actually be dropping the link in the chat for anyone who's interested to sign up. I wish I can go. That's a really nice area, and especially during this time of the year. And I would be remiss by saying, though, too, thank you all. Round of applause virtual round of applause, catch a bottle, virtual clap, and poetry clap for our panelists, and of course our audience as well, for taking the time today as you carry these messages both to your organization and also in your personal life. And also stay tuned, because next we have integrating well-being into total rewards. So with that, Mandy, tell us, in retrospect or moving forward or both, what would have been a nice to have?
Yeah. So there are two things that came immediately to mind. The first one is, obviously, way back in the day when I had my kids, I did not have any paid leave. And I feel like it wasn't as big of a thing. And now, having advocated and fought for that in other organizations, I'm like, oh, that would have probably made the transition a lot easier, or the time with little ones easier. But I think for me, the one that is, I believe we're on the cusp of, that can be very transformational, that I have been able to experience the last year, is a 4-day work week. And I'm not talking 4 10s, 4 8s, still full-time, still benefits, still same, appropriately salaried. And I think there is a shift happening with how we work, that this 4-day work week will start to take off. It feels just as productive to me as a 5-day work week. We're still able to get the same amount of work done. It's in a billable organization where our time and material is really important, but we're still able to maximize that time. And it feels like everybody has the time and space and sort of work-life harmony that we've all been seeking and searching for. So for me, that's been hugely transformative. I'm really excited to see where this goes and what happens, and how we maybe start to see more of it.
I think, first of all, the benefit that I would have loved to have had, again, we've talked about life cycles, right? 35 years ago, the fertility benefit would have been amazing. Now, a year ago, elder care would have been amazing. It's just, so the sandwich generation lives on. But as far as what I hope we see and what I think the future holds is, we've seen some groups and some employers bring on lifestyle accounts, right? Lifestyle spending accounts. And those are great. I think they definitely have their purpose. They definitely fill a hole for some folks. I think we could really do better with those. I think we could offer more than gym memberships and, flex bands and, that kind of stuff through that LSA. And I work with a company that's doing something a little different in the LSA space, which is offering access to some of the benefits that we as employers could contract with, but probably won't because of the expense, and because of the low utilization that we would expect if we used it. But why not be able to let your employee use that monthly stipend for access to better cancer care, access to, a different mental health, maybe even than what you're providing, something in a specialty area, if that's prepared, all those kinds of things. And I think that is really, it really needs to be truly flexible. And to me, the best thing about the LSA model is here's your money. The employer knows how much this is going to cost. It's not utilization based. You're not spending 55 PEPM and then 8 people are using it out of your 2,000, right? You are spending X amount of dollars and your employees are getting to pick and choose what they need to add to their core benefits to make their package work for them. And that is true flexibility. That is truly, I think, what we're looking for. So that's my soapbox for today.
I'll be real brief. I know that we're running out of time. I have to give a plug for Bereave and the movement that they are on to change how we support grieving people in the workplace and families associated with that. It was personal for me a couple of years ago. It was really exciting to find them and what they're doing. And so if you haven't checked out Bereave, I highly recommend it. Free manager trainings along the way, estate planning, trust, all of those types of things to help us provide better support to people in grief as they lose loved ones that work next to us.
Yeah, that's a wonderful organization. A benefit that I wish I had is one benefit that I already had, which is around mental health. Like, I love that the conversation has moved from whispered conversations of an employee having to say, please don't tell my manager, my coworkers or anything, to people saying, oh, would you like the number of my therapist, right? I'm so happy that we're bringing a lot of these things to light. And so I would put that same lens over any benefits program you have. I love what everyone has said around, and I even wrote this down, around the life cycle of benefits. When I was in my 20s, Frank, and I wanted that gym benefit, I wanted the gym closest to me, right? That's my priority now that I'm a mom too. And so a lot of times we have these amazing benefit programs that we cut out just when someone's ready to use them. So that same lens of, hey, this benefit was always there. It didn't pertain to me, so it wasn't important to me. Have that same lens with all the benefit programs you have. You may not need to spend one more dollar. You may just need to reboard your employees to the awesome programs that you already have in place. And then as I look to the future, what I would like to say, and I know Jamie has way more experience in this than I do, is around AI and benefits navigation. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could say, here are all the things that are going on in my life. I have a dog that's 9. This is true for me. I have 2 children and I need to patchwork, summer care, and, I need to get my annual physical. And you just had something that could say, here are all the benefit programs that your company already offers that can help support that. So that's one advantage I can see AI bringing to the forefront of not having that friction between, I don't trust my HR person, I don't want them to be in my business, I want to be able to self-serve, but I truly don't understand all these concepts. And having AI be that glue in between what we're offering and what an employee needs at 2 a.m. in the morning when they're reading through their benefit program is something that I really look forward to.
I think that also just highlights what to me is one of the most important things in benefits is communication and marketing. Because you are right, you can provide some really great benefits, but if people aren't aware as they move into the phase where they can use them, that that's something you have available, then it's all for naught, right? So continuing to communicate with employees about the benefits that you offer, and let that be targeted marketing if that's what you need to do. If you've got that healthcare data, or if you've got information on your HRIS about maybe it's something that's age related or whatever, push that out to them and let them know, hey, this is something that's available to you, because otherwise it's just a hidden benefit and no one's winning there, and we want everyone to win.
All right, team, we are over time and going into the time with our next panelist. Aaron, bring us home with one big word, one big hoorah. You're on mute, Aaron.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So just to wrap it up real quick, a huge benefit that I wish I had when I kind of was starting out is zero pay health dollar plans. They are critically important. It helps all the employees, and also yes, the utilization goes up, but long-term spend on critical things go down. The major things, cancer screenings, needs for organ transplants, things like that, it goes down. So that means overall, the price of the insurance isn't going to skyrocket from year to year, because people are going in and they can actually now afford to be seen by a doctor, because a lot of hourly employees making $11 an hour just can't afford it. So, I mean, that's something to always think about.
Thank you. And thank you, team. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Hacking HR. Stay tuned for the next panel. Appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of the day.
And welcome in, everyone. If this is your first session of the day, we're glad you've decided to join us. If this is your multiple-th session of the day, we're glad you're sticking around. My name is Lauren Lefkowitz. I will be our moderator today for the panel discussion on integrating well-being into total rewards. I am a former corporate HR professional, now fractional HR professional, and an executive coach. And so I'm ultra excited about this particular discussion, because I think it's going to be a really good look into how well-being impacts total rewards, retention, employee engagement, et cetera. So let's get started. Let's welcome the panel to the stage with us and get everybody introduced. All right. Just a little warning, my internet's a little bit spotty right now, so I'm going to count on all of you to keep the conversation going. If I cut out, that's the fun of a remote panel. But let's get started on intros. Chelsea, we'll start with you, go around to Max, and then Esther, Jill, and then Sudhir. If you can tell us who you are, where in the world you are, and what your interest is, including where you work and what you do, what your interest is in this particular topic. So go ahead, Chelsea.
Great, thank you. I'm Chelsea Tisdale. I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. I work at QuadRail Property Group, which is a real estate and investment management organization. I'm the director of human resources there, supporting the operations side of the business. So a big part of my role is looking at that talent and looking at those well-being initiatives and how we can provide that support to our employee base.
Great. I guess I'll go next. I don't know if we'll go in order of the screens that I see. So my name is Max. I am based in Toronto in Canada. I'm currently working at Click Health, which is a large pharma advertising organization, and I head up their global total rewards function, which currently spans Canada, US, Brazil, Singapore, and the UK.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Esther Gramegna. I'm the head of HR for the US team or the Aventum Group. That is a reinsurance company. We have a bunch of MGA and specialty lines. I am very in charge of leading the US operation and building the workforce in the US. I am very focused in, benefits, well-being, definitely total rewards, and also supporting the team building our new, employee engagement programs as well. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
Hi there, I'm Jill Kane. I'm a total rewards and well-being consultant supporting growing companies in both of those aspects in terms of their people and performance. My background has mostly been in compensation and corporate HR. Over the years, I've grown into more of an interest in well-being, helped implement a couple of well-being initiatives at a few companies I've been at. And I just love the topic of integrating well-being into total rewards and kind of moving away from thinking of it as a separate set of programs and how do we actually bring it to life. So I'm super excited for our discussion today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Sudhir Singh. I am joining from San Francisco Bay Area. I am the CEO of ProOrgs, which is focused on helping the organization define its culture in line with their business strategy. I'm also fractional CHRO and also the president of National Human Resources Association for Silicon Valley. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for the introductions. And I would love to invite our audience to join in the conversation, add your comments, add your questions, and we will try to integrate what you're asking as we go along. So panelists, we have a really rich depth and breadth of experience here and a variety of cultural needs around the globe. And so one of the things that I think it was you, Chelsea, said, or maybe it was Jill, I'm already excited about what we're going to talk about. Talked about that it's not a carve out, right? Well-being has always been a carve out. And if you think about sort of in society, the way that we've talked about physical health and mental health, we've always had like a carve out for that. And so of course we've had physical health benefits in our companies or in our global locations where healthcare is universal. And it seems like in society, we've started to integrate mental health into just overall health. And that's what I'm starting to see on the HR side and on the company side. So how are you seeing the total rewards package becoming inclusive of the well-being benefits, the mental health benefits, the things that we used to call soft benefits? And if you just want to come off mute and answer the question and just pay attention to each other's mute buttons, we'll all be able to comment on everything.
Yeah, let me go first on this. So interestingly, yes, we all think when it comes to benefits, they are carve-outs. And I think that is something that needs to change given the complex 3D world that we are living in, right? When I say 3D, I mean disruptive, distracted, and divided, right? So there is lot happening in this world. So first of all, it's important for the organizations to understand that benefits are not a carve-out. They are a means to achieve productivity and commitment, right? They are important for that. And I say it because if you look at productivity and commitment, it has two aspects to it. One is the organizational aspect. It comes from the skills, the resources, the environment. And then there is the individual element, which essentially comes from your motivation and your well-being, right? So if you look at this entire structure, well-being automatically gets integrated into the productivity and commitment structure, and therefore has to be part of the total reward structure. So it cannot be carved out. It cannot be something that if the organization can afford, it's something that the organization must consider as a business expense, which is required to be invested to get that productivity and commitment from the employees. So yeah, I'll stop there and let the other panelists come in.
If I can add something to that, I think it was such a great point that you are bringing up, because like when it comes to our strategy, like we really tend to start with like a representation in our design process, because we're a representation of our current population. Because for example, in our company, we do have teams across the globe in the US, UK, and the Middle East. So regional leads actually play an active role in actually shaping our wellness offerings, like ensuring like cultural nuances, but also language accessibility, because as we know, we have to make sure that our communications is also tailored to the population that we have in front of us. Like, for example, like if I can bring a few things that we have been doing here is like in the US, like lately we have included like our mental health strategy in the US actually include like trauma-informed therapy access, and or like first time parents classes and trainings. Instead, in the Middle East, what we're done is we're focused on financial literacy and family well-being. So definitely a different approach based on what the population actually needed in that point in time. And then I also think that, and please like correct me if like you think something different, but I also think that inclusion but also equity is also important, because we have to also make sure that like we are accounting for time zones differences, caregiving demands, but also like digital access, because as we know, it might be different in different locations. So as we all know, like one size doesn't fit all, and the success here will definitely depend on the like adaptability of the strategy we're using. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll add on to that one. I really liked that and resonated with me that one size fits all just doesn't work, that blanket approach to benefits. So one thing that I found to be beneficial is kind of broadening the definition of what we consider to be well-being in the workplace. So using well-being is essentially the umbrella term, and there are many different facets and branches of well-being that we can then incorporate into that total rewards, or the way I like to see it is like that total employee experience. So you'll have things like financial well-being, you'll have that operational, that really like tactical well-being for those like frontline support teams, community and social well-being, mental health, of course, well-being, and that work-life balance. So kind of broadening how we envision and see well-being kind of helps us evolve that strategy in the organization.
Yeah, just actually, if I could add on to that, I think I had this in my head as something I was going to talk about as well-being, kind of being broader than just the traditional, mental health, which is obviously really important, but mental health is impacted by your physical well-being, things that you eat, so nutritional, your financial is a huge part of it. Things that are happening domestically, things that are happening on your way to the office if you're commuting. So anything that can be done to take away, or at least, some of the friction, or to help individuals navigate some of those facets of life that we all deal with, right? Because support is different for everybody. And so somebody's financial status can really impact their mental well-being, and maybe they love their job and they're having a fantastic career and everything is excellent in the company, but something else is suffering in their life. So, offering different approaches to, I think I call them the 4 pillars, really, as how we've done it in companies that I've worked, really kind of is a holistic way to approach well-being, aside from just offering mental health support, because it could stem from other things that are happening.
Yeah, to add on to that, I like that, one size doesn't fit all. And also just, we tend to kind of think about just the experience at work, but outside of work, what else is impacting us and our ability to show up fully and, really have a good experience at work. So it's really looking at it holistically in all dimensions of well-being. What I've noticed too is kind of more of a trend of personalized benefits, but also personalized well-being experiences. So even within, especially with mental health and financial well-being. So in some offerings I've seen where we are always actively listening, as Esther kind of touched on, in terms of what our employees are interested in the different locations. So we had, financial well-being webinars, and based on the country, there's different topics that they may be interested in. So we're still able to offer that well-being experience, that benefit, but tailor it to the audience. And I think that goes a long way versus just trying to offer one, benefit and have people decipher what that means to them. And, maybe people don't fully access it because they can't or they don't have the interest. So I think that trend towards personalized well-being is also helping with us kind of expanding to more of a holistic well-being experience.
I know we started to touch on this, and everybody's given a couple of examples of well-being benefits, but I'd love for us to get specific on the steps. So imagine that you're at the beginning of this and you're convincing the company you're working for, or company you're consulting for, that it is time to up-level well-being in the workplace. What are the specific steps you've taken to integrate well-being into the workplace? And what are some things that you've achieved bringing in to the companies that you've worked for or with?
If I can start, I would love to share something that has worked with us in the past few years. Of course, the first thing we've done is just getting buy-ins from our executive team as soon as possible, and not just when it comes to funding, but also key was really integrating well-being in our broader employee value proposition. So this will include for us caregiver leave policies, connection to community resources, also family building benefits, and also financial well-being program. But one key exercise that we've done in the last few months specifically was really embedding wellness goals into manager KPIs, and included burnout prevention in leadership team as well, because sometimes they are so focused on business that they really don't tend to take care of themselves. So we also included that, and we saw it very efficient. But the key also here is the integration should ensure that well-being is not considered just an add-on benefits, but it's just really part of how we reward and support our team in the long run, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to mention something similar as well in terms of getting the buy-in. What's really helped me was to kind of understand what problems we're trying to solve, right? And obviously, if it's a benefit, then it's a benefit, which means it's a cost for the organization. There's no way around it, but we're offering it as a benefit to the employee. However, I find that obviously with well-being benefits, specifically if it's mental health related and specific to organizations that are billable, that have billable resources, any time off work is costing the company money. And so not only is the employee suffering because they're off work for a variety of different reasons, but if we can, somehow intervene in that process and make them feel better, which then means that they return back to work sooner and start building clients again, right? That would be a win it's a no-brainer for the executive team to say, sure, that's great. So I kind of try to approach it from that level of what are some of the issues that we're seeing in the different teams, especially in different regions, because in my experience on the global side, for many years, just the approach to well-being is very different in different regions. And so some countries are really all in on it at the government and social level. And some countries, it's still a lot of stigma or, the approach is just starting to be in its infancy. And that's the other key part of it is whenever I've had any successful launch of wellness programs, it's really been at a global scale because I'd rather do it. Well, you have to do it for everybody. So it's not one size fits all, but it's one program, but it has to work for each region. And, we have to tailor it to each region specifically. Otherwise, people are going to feel left out and it kind of becomes, not so good. It's a talking point where, well, these guys get this and I don't get that. So the biggest thing for me was finding out what the issues are directly from the business, seeing how we could integrate well-being into solving some of those. You don't always get the answer there. But then the other thing is it really has to be global and truly applicable to everybody. So nobody feels left out or kind of on the sidelines.
All right, I'm happy to go next, and I might be contradicting a few things that Max said. So sorry about that, Max. In my experience, I have been a big advocate for localization. So letting the business decide in terms of how much can we spare for total rewards. And I have always seen benefits as part of total rewards, not something that is outside. I already talked about that. So figure out at the corporate level, what is that we can spare for total rewards, and then the local leaders decide in terms of how they are going to use it to make sure that the populations in the respective areas are served well. The other thing that I have also ensured that not look at it only from a money perspective, but it's time and money, right? So when you have the total rewards budget, you can use it in both ways, right? Either you can use it in dollars or you can use it in hours, right? And in some geographies, hours are more valuable than the dollars, right? So that gives a lot of flexibility. Third thing that I have also advocated is not use PEPM too much. That on the face of it, per employee per month cost, it becomes a very easy and simple thing. And we are only spending $20 per employee per month, but you are spending it for 2,000 people and only 8 people are using it. That doesn't make sense. Instead, make those funds available for the people who really need it, and that way those 8 people could have got a lot more in terms of dollars as compared to what they really got, right? Last but not the least, I agree with some of the comments, coming from the audience, that it's just not mental well-being, right? You have to really look at it from holistic perspective. It is the financial well-being, physical well-being, and so on. And it varies from geography to geography, demographics to demographics. So we have to really weave, very fine and figure out what exactly is needed by the people. And last but not the least, one thing that has really helped the employees is having the zero pay dollars available, right? So these are a corpus that is available for special needs. So for example, there is something an employee needs, but it's not covered under the regular benefits plans and so on. They have access to this corpus, right? So, that is something that has built a huge amount of respect and commitment towards the organization.
I can add on to that too. So I think, it's important also to kind of look at, in terms of the wellness dollars and where those go, in getting buy-in from leadership, really just starting with listening and getting direct information from the employees and what they care about and what they're most interested in. In terms of what I've found works best is kind of looking at all the data that's available. So if I'm working with a company, just kind of digging into any of their healthcare plan metrics as far as utilization, participation, feedback about particular benefits or programs that they find the most interesting. And even in some aspects, we've looked at things like some of the aggregated healthcare data and what issues may be the most kind of effective to kind of address through our well-being program, and kind of start from there as a first step. But it certainly evolves based on feedback and just that continuous listening and measuring data and just getting feedback from employees.
I'll just add on quickly. I agree with a lot of what the other panelists have said, but I think one piece that really stands out to me is to empower the leaders. It's great to have all of these programs out there, but a lot of them, even though they're fantastic, go underutilized just because we're not communicating them. Leadership isn't championing them. So one piece that we've done recently that's been quite impactful is we have those training for our programs and initiatives for those well-being initiatives for the full employee base, but then also having a separate training that's specifically dedicated and designed from that manager lens to train managers how they can further support their employee base, and encouraging managers to not only bring it in during those big moments, those ad hoc campaigns, but also bring those training and wellness initiatives into the day-to-day, into those one-on-one meetings, into those daily conversations, and really relying on our managers to be the true champions of the programs. And since we've taken that shift and added in that level, we've really seen programs usage rates to go up, just verbatim employee experiences to rise as well, and just a positive shift in the evolution of our programs being integrated.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's almost like I paid you to lead us into the next question. So I'll ask you to add anything on that you think is important before we move on to other folks, since you've started the conversation for us. But what are the good and effective communication strategies and communication tactics to make sure that we are not in a world where we've built this incredible well-being program that is fully integrated into our total rewards? We're so excited about it and we're utilizing it, and then it just sort of falls into the ether because the rest of our staff, and especially the larger our companies get, they don't know. So Chelsea, do you have anything to add to what you led us into? And then let's move on to everybody else as well.
Yeah, I would say that just be in touch, be in tune with your workforce. I think those main channels are important, like the internal intranet, those mass emails, those are important as foundations, but also looking at your workforce. So getting to know them. I support the operations side of the business. A lot of individuals that aren't working at a desk, they're not checking their email or their intranet as regularly. So how can we get to those individuals as well? Is it a specific site? It could be something posted on the wall. And again, that's where we really lean on those managers to be bringing that into the day-to-day.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. I think something the word championship or champions really comes up a lot, because we actually had a case here at Click where we launched a really, really good vendor and a partnership for our US side to help employees navigate their health benefits. And this was prior to me coming on board into the organization. And so when I started looking at the vendors that we have as part of our strategy, I said, this is an amazing offering. I mean, this is something that most companies would like to have. And people said, well, we don't really know what they do. And these individuals were on the HR side. And so they said, we heard the name, but we don't really know what they do. And so to me, that was a huge opportunity, because if people aren't utilizing the service that we're paying for, we're not realizing, the goals that we have as a company with that provider. The employees aren't getting the benefit. So the first thing I did was just have a kind of re-education session for our entire HR team that is employee facing, that has contacts with leaders at the leadership level or employees on a day-to-day basis, and just make sure that they understand what offerings we have, how they work, what the purpose is. And then that way the take back for them was to try to weave that into the conversations when they have those conversations with employees, about well-being or something else comes up. Try to see if you could weave that whatever it is, the program or the vendor or the partnership in. That's how you kind of spread the word, because you could definitely send the emails, you could do the Slack or the Teams, but it's that real conversation that you're having with somebody that's coming to you with a concern, maybe unrelated, maybe related. You kind of just say, oh, have you heard about this? And so the first step is to make sure that everyone actually knows what is being offered. So that is super critical, and I've seen that work really well firsthand.
Max, I think you shared such a great point, and I love that you mentioned that, because something that has been so efficient with us in our company, especially in the US and also in the UK, was really like manager enablement, like making sure that we teach our managers what we offer and give them a chance to share what we offer in their own voice and in their own way, because that's more efficient instead of just like blasting a bunch of like mass emails to everybody. So like I definitely see how there is a lot of value in that. But also another thing that, in addition to that, that has been effective for us is also being like really like some localized storytelling is also being very efficient. And also like our marketing team is being very incredible when it comes to like implementing small little like digital nuggets here and there, short reminders within, like just embedded within our platform HRS system, learning and development system. So all in there you will see well-being reminders or well-being programs, promotions everywhere in every single systems that we have. So that's also been helpful for us. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on, I like that as well. I think it starts with management too, and just having them be aware of what's out there and being able to articulate that to employees, and just having multiple channels for communication, I think really, and having them actually embody it in their day-to-day practice as well. And I see a lot of those. I like that you shared, Esther, about success stories. Like that could also be used as recruiting and onboarding materials, just to keep the conversation and awareness pretty high. In my background, I've kind of come from more of total rewards and compensation area. So I've worked quite a bit with like total reward statements, which I found it's a little slightly different, but I think it also is really was eye-opening to see how many employees could actually see the value in dollars of everything that's offered to them and not just the pay amount. So that was, we had a lot of positive feedback to that as well. So there's just multiple ways I think that we can continue to communicate that value, share it with employees, and even extend that to sharing it with, in job postings and on the website, intranet sites, and just being able to communicate it to more broad audience.
Yeah, these were all wonderful ideas, and particularly big fan of storytelling, like, letting the employees share their stories. So thank you for bringing that in, Esther. I also have seen the impact is a lot more when we are focused on three things: the message, the timing, and the placement. So instead of spending our energy on communication consistently on everything all through the year, if we identify what would be needed by the employees at what time, and we really place it out there. So for example, the anxiety and stress levels are particularly high around the appraisal time and so on. So that's a time when we talk a little more about EAP or any other, mental wellness program that we have, and so on. Or like there could be a need for more of financial advice around a certain point in time when the employees are receiving their bonus or things like that. So talking about the benefits specifically around those times and how employees could use it, and then backing it up with some past success stories, that creates a really powerful combination.
If you have not been to the chat and you're just watching the video or listening from afar, please go look at the chat. There are really amazing comments from our listeners about how to check on utilization, how to highlight in your total rewards packages what's available and what's being used. All of you have talked about utilization and impact. And I could talk to you all for the whole day about this. We could have an entire day seminar on this, but we are probably to our final question, which is, let's talk about what to do for those who are in our audience, who are looking at the comments, who are listening to you and are just completely overwhelmed because this is the first time that they're allowed to even think about adding wellness and integrating that into, and well-being, integrating that into their total rewards. So if you're an HR leader in a company that wants to do this, but has never, what advice do you give for getting started?
I can start off. I would say that one big shift that I would pay attention to is just the moving towards those day-to-day experiences for employees. We have different generations coming into the workforce, and they're wanting different things in their total employee experience. Social impact, community causes. There's a shift and evolving mindset to wanting to be more in tuned and morally connected to the output, the social impact that their company is having. So paying attention to those environmental, social, community well-being initiatives is going to be a major retention tool and attraction tool for organizations when they're looking at their well-being. And the other two things I would say are just listen to your people. You can do that in a variety of different ways: anonymous surveys, roundtables, just getting the feedback from the people of what they really, really want. We did a roadshow across the country to really hear from the people about what type of well-being they would want, is when we came up with the idea of this operational well-being, which was those practical, really tactical well-being measures. And the other one that I had mentioned previously is just really empower your managers to be the champions and the leader of those initiatives once you get them in place.
Chelsea, I totally agree with you. It's so beautiful the way you put it, because it shows to me that kind of what we try to practice here, such as like be intentional with the approach that we take, like start small, be intentional, like make sure that we are relevant when it comes to what we implement, because as we said, like not everything will work for everybody. So, and I love the fact that, as you mentioned, like be also like, up to date when it comes to what's happening around us. Like such a good point, because I also think that we need to ask our people, in addition to doing our own research as support teams, but also we need to make sure that we ask our team what they need, prioritize equity earlier instead of later on, especially when we work with global teams. But also, like what has been working out for us is really like integrating the well-being not as a standalone policy, but really integrating with our performance reviews and performance processes and our business strategy, instead of keeping that such as something completely distant than those two key aspects for our organization. Because I think if we don't do that, just like the well-being program, it won't stick, it won't work, because it's just something that is so silent, and it shouldn't be silent. So I really think that we should like really integrate the well-being program or our well-being philosophy per se, really in the way we lead, the way we like recognize our people, because that's how it can really become efficient and, as I said, intentional.
Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, I just had a quick add-on in terms of what I've done is what I would recommend rather is to understand what already exists, or what things already are happening in place. I mean, if it's completely nothing, then that's great. You get a blank slate. But oftentimes there are things that are already happening, maybe as part of the general health package that is offered in the country, or there's other things that have happened in the company that people may have forgotten about, or you're paying for a subscription of something and you just, this is, no one's really using it, but we have it. So my first recommendation is a super simple one, is just to do an assessment of what already exists, what's currently in place, what programs and partnerships can you leverage to further enhance. You don't always have to go out and buy something new. You could maybe build on existing, and that sits really well with the people that pay the bills, the finance team. So, understanding what your baseline is, and then also to develop, before you launch anything, to develop a robust framework on how to actually evaluate the effectiveness of these programs. Because again, leadership will ask and say, great, we're happy to spend XYZ dollars, but how are we actually going to measure this program? Is there utilization metrics? Is that something done by the vendor? Is that something done internally? So I've always, before launching anything, have had a framework that I presented to leadership on how we're actually going to measure success. Because once you start, it's a lot harder to do that. And you might find that it's not even possible for some of the things that you're doing. So that's my 2 tips on getting this kind of started off the ground.
My advice would be very similar to what I would give to any newbie in any area, is fake it till you make it. So just look at the best in class in your industry. Like, if you're looking at your own industry, your people and your setup cannot be very different than them, right? So just look at what they are doing, and then start customizing it over a period of time, start listening to your people, and then fine tune it. But you could very easily start with what the best in the class in your industry are doing in your area.
Yeah, and I think also too, kind of this was already touched upon, but just starting small and like Max said, starting with what you have. I think oftentimes we think that we need to get an official wellness budget together, and that can be a lengthy process and have a lot of hurdles. But really just taking a look at what are we already offering and communicating that more, and also looking at, just our day-to-day, what, the way work is structured. Are there things that we could implement that would just take away stress from certain teams? That's also improving well-being. So some of the things that we don't think of, it doesn't have to be a formal program or a cost. It can just be a shift in the way that we're working, the way that we're communicating with one another. So I think that sometimes goes missed because we think of it in terms of such a big vision. But that's where you could, start and build from there. So that would be my advice. Thank you.
Panelists, I want to thank you. You have all been absolutely incredible. I could go on and on. And so for our audience members, please look at the comments. They've been brilliant, and connect with each other. You're not alone in this. And so if you're building Total Rewards for the first time and really integrating wellness, well-being, and different aspects of health, one thing you might think about is if you tell employees, if they use it, you'll build more, you tend to get better utilization. And network with each other, network with the folks in the comments, connect with these panelists and with me on LinkedIn. You'll find the more you curate your LinkedIn, the more you'll get that's relevant to you. The very last thing I'll share is that Hacking HR is going on the road, and there is a live event happening next week in San Diego. On June 30th, 100 plus HR leaders are joining so far. Yesterday, it was 85 plus, so we are growing. So any HR leaders who are in or around San Diego, you can join. There's going to be a link in the comments for anyone who's interested in signing up. Again, thank you so much, panelists. You've been amazing, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to panel 3, day 2 of the Total Reward Summit. I'm Sneha, Chief Event Strategist at Hacking HR, and I'll be hosting this session for the next 45 minutes. There's something quietly powerful about movement, not just of people, but of possibilities. Just so you know, years ago, global mobility meant expats and visas that we know. Today, it means culture shifts, talent flow, remote teams, and a completely reimagined workforce. If you see a team member working from Lagos but building products for customers in London today, a leader relocating to Singapore and discovering a new way to lead, and a startup that opens up its first global hire and suddenly grows into every single direction. So, global mobility is not just about logistics anymore. We all know that. It's all about belonging, strategy, and intentional growth. And that's exactly what we're diving into in this panel. So, our topic for today is global mobility market trends and best practices. To kick things off, quick question for everyone in the chat or to our attendees. If you could work from anywhere in the world for 1 month, where would you go and why? Drop it in the chat. We'd love to see your dream work from anywhere spots and just get a feel of that global vibes in the room. And for everyone who are tuning in, this session is credit eligible through Shrum, HRCI, and IHRAM. Please do make sure you collect them. And let's meet our fantastic global minded panelists and awesome ladies. So, as we begin, please introduce yourselves by sharing who you are, what you do, and what's that one city or country that's taught you the most about global mobility in your own career journey. And let's start with Buki as I have on my screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Buki Adeyinka, and I've been in human resources now for about a decade, partnering with senior HR leaders in the biotech, tech, and energy sectors. Very passionate about aligning employee needs with organizational strategy. I feel, or I believe, that's really where the magic happens. And one country that I've worked that have taught me quite a bit about global mobility was actually when I worked in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm now in the United States, but that is one country that taught me quite a bit about global mobility. And I can talk about a little bit more about that as we progress during this discussion.
Thank you, Buki. And Jen, if you'd like to go next.
So similar to Buki, I'm a person who has had great experience with mobility in terms of my own career. So I have over 20 years of talent and HR roles under my belt, starting on the agency side early on and then moving in-house. And so I've been lucky enough to work with smaller organizations and also multi-layered, highly matrixed global companies. So excited for this conversation today. But I have earlier in my career, I started off in New York City, but then went to Paris to work. I'm a dual national, so it was pretty easy to do at the time. And then to London. And I was actually working for a West African client during that time. And that brought me to Lagos as well for 6 months. So I'm excited to talk about this subject because it's near and dear to my heart, and also I think it's increasingly important in today's world. So thanks for having me.
Can't agree more. Thank you, Jen. And mine, thank you so much for connecting with us from Digital Nomad Fest, and thank you for making it that.
Hello, everyone. This is Mina. I'm originally based out of Istanbul, Turkey. Now I am at the Nomad, one of the biggest Nomad festivals in the world, and in Bansko. There's a Digital Nomad Festival, which is very relevant to what we are going to talk about today. I've been a remote worker since 2012. I've been a thought leader and a keynote speaker in the space of the gig economy, remote work, and have been helping individuals and companies to transition to either hybrid or remote work, and helping also companies with their strategies about how to mobilize their talent and how to make it right. So I'm so much looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Christina?
Hi everyone. My name is Christina, and similar to Buki, more than a decade in the recruitment, people operations, and partnering space. And I've been working in 5 different countries, and I think it's a part of also my story, sharing how the relocation and mobility can actually shape our careers. And at the moment, I'm actually working for a travel and expense company where like the travel component and the global mobility in the heart. And I think one of the biggest challenges is when we are tapping into the global talent, because after the pandemic, and that's one of the topics that we'll be touching upon, we completely shifted the strategy and realize that we can actually hire talent way broader than just in the locations or hubs and offices. And it's a great opportunity for us to share some of those experience and maybe also from our HR colleagues to widen their horizon and thinking about the talent and the strategy.
And we've got Radhika.
Hi, everybody. I'm the last, but hopefully not the least. I work as an HR manager in Boston, Massachusetts. In my career, I've worked in global mobility, talent acquisition, employee relations. I've touched almost all parts of HR, and what I've realized is global mobility is often treated as a reactive process, at least for smaller organizations, which leads to further much more bigger problems. And it's it's something that is my personal favorite, as well as I have moved countries myself. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much for your amazing introductions. Diving into the conversation, let's go with the basics and let's cover up what are the biggest trends that you're seeing in global mobility today. And who would like to go next first?
I can start. There's so many.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I would like to start with that we are definitely now talking a lot about the tech-driven solutions and how we can actually expand our horizon. And one of the newer shifts is really adopting the technology-driven solutions and streamlining the processes. And what I mean by that, when we're thinking about the traditional hub locations and we're traditionally having the offices, for example, London, Paris, Berlin, New York, San Francisco, and where we wanted to hire the employees in the 50 miles radius to those locations. And now with the extensive usage of the technology, for example, now we can not only have a video conferences, we can connect remotely, we can do the recordings, we can collaborate extensively also offline, which enables us also to hire and tap into the talents that are actually sitting in the very different time zones. So we're not now thinking about the global mobility in this like regional equivalent, but actually we're now thinking about it as a really truly global, because we're so enabled by the technology.
I also think it's fueling broader business strategies, right, around leveraging mobility as a way to develop folks and to retain folks. But also as the global workforce continues to shift in terms of scarcity, in terms of what it really means to be appropriate for a role in this kind of skills-dominated world we're moving into, it enables organizations to, again, retain folks, but also prepare them in a more agile way for whatever business needs arise. From an employee perspective, obviously, it means that if they're willing to move, if it requires a physical move, not all of them do, it enables them to stay in an organization, right? So that longevity without stagnating, so there's a lot of new experiences to leverage. So it's kind of I don't know that that's a trend necessarily, but I think with the likes of, and Christina, you talked about it, with the new technology today that, well, even Workday has really gone above and beyond what they used to do in terms of skills taxonomies and integrating AI, and then all of the API usage, like for like Eightfold and, you know, Fuel 50 and these other companies that are now doing, making it easier to create a mobility infrastructure. I think the question then becomes, is your data good, and is your infrastructure, you know, ready to support what's needed for this kind of endeavor?
Just okay, I'll go first. Just to add to Jen's point, at least in since I work in the pharmaceutical industry and I worked in biotechnology too, we are having global mobility conversations early on rather than waiting once the offer is out, which basically means that alongside budget, timelines, and overall business needs, we are also trying to ask leaders if there is a candidate who has some sort of who requires some sort of immigration support, are we ready to offer that, in terms of like, are we ready to wait to fill maybe like 3 months to fill a role? Is that okay with you? Does it align with the business expansion plans? Because in my experience, we have seen where we tried hiring a candidate that was on some sort of temporary work contingent visa, and what happened was that on the other hand, we were also planning a RIF. So this person had already resigned, and now not only they had kind of lost their job, but their immigration status was also in jeopardy. So we're trying to have these conversations early on during workforce planning, so situations like those don't arise, where not only the candidates get impacted, but there's a bad employer brand.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to add one thing. So we have, sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we used to have expats, like with the big companies, especially the executives, they would have expats and have, you know, big budgets for moving them to another country, paying for the schooling, the housing and everything. Now this has made it more, I think, accessible for companies to have hired those highly skilled executives from around the world without the need to have those big budgets. So I think this is like, you know, this trend that we are seeing is democratizing both work and accessibility, and you know, the accessibility both to
Great.
talent and for the talent job opportunities. So it's removing the search friction in both ways, like both on the talent side to search for the jobs to get hired by those companies, those big companies, and on the company side to be able to hire anyone, like even the skilled talent from wherever they want. So it's giving the flexibility and democratization. So that's the biggest thing, the biggest trend that we see right now.
I think another trend that we're seeing as well is companies understanding that it's no longer a one size fits all. Really understanding, you know, what the business need is, the employee profile, and designing models to align with the business needs. So, for example, now we're seeing more of a shift towards more virtual assignments versus your regular traditional assignments where there's, you know, physical relocation. Depending on what the business need is, for example, if the company is looking to expand into a new market, then yeah, maybe your traditional relocation may be warranted. But if it's testing a market or just supporting a project, that can be done, you know, virtually. So I think there's just more intentionality with regards to what exactly the mobility strategy should be versus what the business need is. So understanding in a nutshell that it's not always a one size fits all. So we're seeing more of the virtual assignments than we did pre-pandemic. I'm sorry, post-pandemic.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. These are amazing details that you have mentioned, and we're seeing more companies hiring across borders than ever before. But we're also seeing the headlines about the rapid layoffs and the misaligned expectations, and a lot of remote teams feeling a bit disconnected. So, with all that in mind, what's often missed when companies hire globally, especially when it comes to employee expectations and long term retention?
I can jump in on that one. We learned a very hard lesson very early on in my career when we actually acquired a company out in Uganda. And so we expanded into Uganda. We're all very excited. We identified a high potential employee within the organization that we believed was capable. He was in fact capable. He was very eager. And so we thought, all right, why doesn't this person lead the transition on the ground? On paper, everything looked perfect. So we moved very quickly, logistics, offer letter, and all of that good stuff. However, one thing, or a couple of things we didn't do, we focused too heavily on the business case, and we totally ignored, the human experience, the cultural aspect of the assignment. And so this person moved to Uganda very quickly. The cracks started to open, and we realized that, his performance dipped. He was feeling very isolated. And, fast forward a couple of months later, this person asked to come back home early. And so lessons learned basically is that when you have somebody on assignment, there's a lot that you have to do before people go off on long-term assignments. There's a pre-departure planning that has to be done. There's, helping the person understand the culture. Also, while the person is on the ground, helping them find a mentor, making sure that you have those regular checkpoints with a person. And so those are some of the lessons that we learned. Again, on paper, everything looked good. We focused too much on the business case and not necessarily the human experience aspect of it. And so it didn't quite work well for us, but we learned a very hard lesson. One mistake that we certainly didn't make again, but it was a hard lesson nevertheless.
Yeah, I guess just to add to Buki's point, like hiring someone globally it's not just an operational task, it's a human task too. And we often, or the senior leaders often forget about the human aspect of it. Most of the times they're moving their entire lives, and not enough is discussed about, like, let's say somebody is moving from India. What about spousal visas, right? How long would it take? And their kids would have to go to a completely new education system. Not only that, but on the professional side of things, there's a whole reintegration plan that has to be designed, because the way we might work in Asia is very different than the work expectations or the cultural expectations in the US. So oftentimes there's a misalignment, and it often happens that once the person has gotten their status, they look for a new employer and move, which doesn't really yield a good ROI. Another thing, besides this, another thing that I have noticed is when a lot of things that companies miss is when hiring somebody who's already in the US but on some sort of temporary visa. There's often this misconception that if somebody is already in the US, that it's less work, right? And oftentimes we hire people without communicating or thinking about, like, there are certain timelines involved. There's certain restrictions involved. So if you're going to have a riff and you're like, oh, I really want to keep this person, but I'm just going to move them to another role. And if they're on an H-1B, there's a lot of things that you have to think about and refile again for them. We have to ask ourselves, before we actually make a commitment to hire, we have to ask ourselves certain questions. Are we ready to sponsor? And in case things go sideways, if there's a delay or denial, what are we going to do? So.
Yeah. A McKinsey study, I think it's a little old now, maybe end of 2023, reported that 42% of mobility assignments fail within the first 18 months. Naming this, what we're talking about here, the kind of the human element, the onboarding beyond just the in-office onboarding, but the long-term kind of inculcation or integration, right, that you're all speaking about. That's a big number, and I wouldn't be surprised if, and I should have checked, but if that's a bit higher now, even in terms of a failure rate. And it begs the question of, for successful mobility programs, and I have a few cited, Unilever being one of them. It really highlights the need for, aside from infrastructure and the data, right, about your people, right? It's also about governance, right? So a centralized kind of governance, or a group of people that look after this from a global perspective, that can, on a very proactive level, address all of these things, big and small, because they have the expertise to do it, and it's towards a common goal, right, of mobility and talent sharing. I think is really needed. Now, how that's structured depends, right, on the organization and the investment, but I think it really it's warranted. And I think just basic things like communication as well, where we've learned lessons as well in previous companies, where I was, in the holding company, and we had a number of operating entities under the holding company, all of which worked very, very separately. They had their own teams, their own culture. So there was that added layer of complexity there. But what would happen is we would be so hyper focused on getting the role filled and getting everybody, really, attuned to that, that, hey, we're getting this role filled. It's a great mobility success story. But the receiving end, we're not completely clear on the mandate for this person. They weren't completely clear on what the person was going to do. They weren't completely clear. And so there was not only a defensive kind of reaction, but it also created even more complexity and complication for this person coming in, because they had to engender. There's a piece of that you have to do anyway in any new role, right? Where you engender trust and followership and influence, whatever. But there is, where does the responsibility lie, with the organization on both sides, to ensure that people are prepared, not just peer to peer, but groups, people, teams, anybody this person is going to touch or have, or work with.
Yeah, just to build on that just a little bit, and I think something that's often also missed is not clarifying expectations or what success looks like for the person. Half the time, even when this person is sent off on this assignment, it's not very clear for the organization what is expected, let alone the person. And so that is often missed when we don't do that very well. And I think one of the things that companies can start to do is to use data and feedback loops to evaluate, assignment success and refine policies as needed. Yeah.
And also the employee resource groups, having those in the company so that there's a camaraderie between those little communities within the company. That really helps in terms of culture, in terms of the peer support, and it really increases the engagement. So, and once they become like a community, the company doesn't need to do anything else, because that community helps us each other, and that really helps in the mobility scene.
Can't agree more. And I see a lot of amazing comments popping up with their own perspectives and agreeing with you all. And we will address them a little bit later while closing off. And now, as we have been discussing the definition of global mobility as it's evolving and as it's fast, gone are those days when global assignments automatically meant a 2-year relocation, a package with a container shipment, and a house overseas. In today's flexibility, hybrid first world, are companies still prioritizing short-term or virtual assignments over traditional long-term expat goals? And if yes, what's driving that shift? Is it cost, or is it agility? Is it employee preference?
Mm-hmm. I think all of them. So, Ebuki, okay, you'd like to go first?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think you're right. I'm not sure companies are prioritizing one over the other. It just depends on the business need. So if a company is looking to expand into a new market, it's a longer commitment. They want to establish like a brand presence there. Then, the traditional mobility model would, be more sustainable, more ideal, if you will. But if it's just testing the market, so again, it's just going to depend on what the organization is looking to do. But more and more, we're finding that virtual assignments are, becoming a little bit more popular too, largely because of the cost, obviously. And it's easier to include others. It's cheaper. It's easier to include more people in virtual assignments than you would your traditional physical presence or relocation. So it just depends on what the organization is trying to achieve for the most part.
Yeah, to add on that, I think just to shift slightly, because we're definitely speaking a lot about the cost efficiencies and also the experiences. What we also see post-pandemic, that's employee willingness to tap into the well-being and their experiences. And when I looked into one of the recent reports, IntelliMobility Mercer's Outlook report, they are sharing about the new term, which is assignment fatigue. So meaning that a lot of really senior employees are really tired moving the countries every 3 years when they need to have a new assignment overseas. And it definitely impacts the life and the well-being in families. And we already talked a bit that when we're relocating people overseas and they need to rebuild their life, they're also facing the change curve, where in the beginning, they're definitely excited and pumped by the opportunity, new location, everything is wonderful. But at some point, when they see the difficulties with visa, housing, schooling, and also educational system, they really meet this level of depression sometimes. And it's also for us really rethinking that the virtual assignments and trying out, or shorter assignments where the visits would be for a couple of days or for a week, is definitely less destructive for a family rather than committing and relocating for 1 year, for example, from London to San Francisco.
I would like to add something, because usually when we think about it's either expat or like short-term or virtual, but you can have it both. I mean, you can have like a full-time regular job in a virtual way. So because like people think that if it's virtual, it has to be like project-based, or it has to be like, a short-term assignment. No, now we have solutions by EOR companies where you can be employed as a full-time employee through those EOR companies and yet still be a full-time employee for a company. So like, it's not like the opposite side is not either or that. It's like it can be both. So like now we are living in this world where you can just like the employee can take the benefit of being a full-time employee, being covered just like, like an employee living in that specific region and being covered with all the health insurance and everything. Because like these solutions, now we have these solutions. We didn't have those solutions. We didn't have the legal structure, but now after the pandemic, we have all these solutions. So the employees can be benefiting. So it doesn't necessarily have to, I really want to underline this because people think about this as freelancing or like, virtual assignment or like a short term. No. I mean, you can be a full-time employee, even at big companies, like, with full credibility and everything, and yet be located in your original location, don't need the mobility.
So I just want to add to both to Bookie's and mine's point. Basically, I work for a company where our HQ is in China. However, we have offices in UK and the US. So we do see it really does depend on the role and the business need. So if you're expanding into a new market, like what Bookie said, we might, and if the person is is in a role that is very much needed in that new market, we might actually give all of those resources and move the person. However, we sometimes also use our resources in the home office. Like, for example, we had to set up payroll in the UK, and while we were hiring a UK-based person, we still wanted people to get paid. So we brought an employee from our home office who had the knowledge, and they were in the UK on a certain visa. But then again, we have to be very careful that are we creating a permanent establishment risk here, and we have to put in effective guardrails. And I do agree with Mind's point. I'm a huge fan of EORs, and I've worked with some really great EORs. While working in smaller organizations, they take a lot of burden regarding compliance, payroll, and labor laws from the internal HR team, and they don't have to worry about that, because I cannot be an expert on European labor laws. I don't know anything about them, and I wouldn't want to say anything about something that I don't know. And they do that for you, and they also know about the market, so they can also benchmark salaries or what the best practices are in that area as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And while we are still on the topic, we know that global hiring isn't just about the massive multinationals anymore. It's also the startups and smaller companies that are really going global too, that we all see. So, with all that comes a big decision early on. Should you build your own legal entity in a very new country, or just go with an EOR solution? And how should those small companies think through that choice, especially if they're just starting to grow across borders?
Let me start. Definitely go with an EOR or a PEO.
Yeah.
Until you really know that you want to establish your business there. If you're not like growing, why would you go through all that hustle and just spend your time and as Radhika said, I mean, if you don't have that expertise, let the experts take care of all that hustle, and you just concentrate on what you're doing and your own operations. And yeah, in the old days, we didn't have these solutions, but now we have them. So why not utilize them and go through? Because you cannot know the politics and all those things that you need to do because different locations. You have to have that the intel as well, because it's not only about what's being written on the website or on the papers, but they're sometimes in some locations it needs to have those connections to make it happen. So it's worth it, all the hustle.
Deloitte did a study last year where they said that, in terms of compliance risks and other related risks, those risks go down by about 65% with local representation handling, legal and compliance kind of considerations. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, just to add to both of your points, I worked with companies that have established legal entity from scratch in different countries, and it really depends upon your model, where you are in your growth. For smaller companies, definitely an EOR is the way to go. They handle compliance, payroll, but again, it should not be treated like a band-aid. You should be intentional about it. It's not something when things start going wrong, that's when you're like, oh, let's go get an EOR, because if things are already gone wrong, they can't fix it for you. So it should be thought about in a more strategic way. And yes, they are a bit expensive, but once they do a lot of heavy lifting without actually you making mistakes. So I'm all
Yeah, and also coming from the European perspective and looking after so many different locations in Europe, there is very often a misperception that EMEA is one country, and when, for example, the US company is coming to Europe and they're saying, oh, it's maybe similar whether we're hiring the employee in Berlin or in France, but the local labor laws are killers. And I think if it's rather not a strategic solution, but test the market to see whether the solution will be expanding and selling, then EOR is definitely a way to go, or similar ways of employing people. However, if there's a really deep market penetration, how I would like to set up and sell the products there, then one of the alternative solutions, also thinking about the companies, what is the locals, maybe smaller but strong partner, and looking into the M&A solution and looking how we can still have a local entity, but not coming from the creation from scratch. Is there anything that we can acquire, which is serving for us the purpose?
Yeah, just to add to that point, like we were hiring in Denmark through a PEO, and I realized it was very different from France. And I was like, oh my God, they only have to work about 38 hours a week. I want to move there, but it's so different. And I do agree. But oftentimes, smaller companies do not have the opportunity to do an M&A, so they do have to stick with the EOR model. And even setting up a legal entity is very, very complex, whether that's the US or Europe in general. So a lot of smaller companies cannot do that, but they do want to like have salespeople and get their name out.
Thank you so much. We resonate with all of that. And I would love a very quick responses for this particular one that's straightforward. So, how do you find the right balance between standardizing global mobility policies and allowing flexibility by either region or the role?
I think in the end of the day, it depends on the role. I think while we need to have a framework and how maybe just sharing our experience, how we set it up in more organization, which is still maturing, is thinking about what is type of the talents that we would like to offer the global mobility opportunities, and defined what are the departments where we're strategically can also hire remotely or in the different locations. And then there is also some strategic relocations, and while a standard global mobility program might not work in those circumstances. So I really believe deeply in the term glocalization, where we need to think globally, but apply it locally, where it means that when we're reaching one big goal, we need to still think about the local experience and whether it makes sense, and being very actually honest with the people who are moving, what are the challenges that they will be facing on spot, whether there's all the things that we discussed, whether it's bureaucracy or setting up their life or learning a new language. We actually have forgotten that in a lot of assignments, when there are people moving abroad, they actually need to learn completely different culture and the language, and that they would need to invest their private life into those also new experiences, and if they want to integrate effectively, and how also the communities and EORs can support them locally.
Great.
So intentionality was the word that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And as Christina is saying, the companies has to be intentional about this decision. It has to be a strategic decision, not like, let's hire someone from here or there or like for this role. It has to have a strategy. It has to have the processes in place, because usually people blame hybrid work, remote work, but the actual root cause is that they do not have the adequate infrastructure or the processes built for that kind of work. So they have to be intentional about whatever they are going to apply to their either the talent strategy or the hiring.
And I think it's also another call for the governance piece too, so that there can be an assessment made. So in my case before, my former employer with a number of operating entities underneath, as we were approaching it, we needed a representative from those markets, from those companies to help us. And, we had a level of malleability to work with, because it isn't one size fits all, but we actually took input from people on the ground there and made everybody comfortable with how we were approaching certain roles. But I totally agree. There needs to be a level of flexibility, regardless of how big or small it is.
Amazing. I would love for this panel to go on for another hour, but as we are right at time, I would love to close this one with our final reflections. Let's close out this global conversation with a look forward towards our future, and how should companies prepare for the future of work globally starting from today? If that's going to be your piece of advice, what would that be?
I think be more strategic about global mobility. Make it more intentional. Don't do it as just a checkbox, but as something you would do in your workforce planning. And second, please put in effective guardrails, because people hold multiple citizenships or multiple work visas. So putting in effective guardrails also offers that flexibility to employees, but also makes sure that you are not creating risk for the organization.
I concur. I think, it's a mindset shift. Organizations should continue to be intentional about it. They should plan ahead, bake it into their workforce planning, and recognize that if when used appropriately, it can be a powerful enabler of workforce agility, business continuity, and leadership development.
I would add that all the business functions have to be aligned around the strategy, because if the functions are not aligned, then there will be a problem. So that's why, as everyone else said, it has to start at the company strategy level and need to be cascaded down onto every employee, every function of the company.
Yeah, and to tap into that, definitely in the future, we'll see maybe some new ways of working. And we shouldn't forget that when we're looking into the global workforce, specifically, if it's not only global mobility into the hubs, but hiring remote workers, how do we integrate them into the teams? Do we allow them the opportunities to connect with the team members and that they're actually feeling the part of the teams if we're looking into the hybrid employment models?
This is awesome. That's a wrap on this particular panel, and thank you all for tuning in. This was such an amazing conversation, and I hope you're leaving with a bag of full good points to take back and actually use. And I see a lot of comments of people of their own dream places that we have asked earlier in the panel. I see an amazing list of countries that they have listed. I would love to go back and check out after the summit. And before we drop off, just a very quick heads up. We're heading to San Diego next week on Monday, June 30th for our in-person Hacking HR Roadshow. And if you're in or know someone who is traveling to San Diego or living in, we'd love for you to join us for our fresh margaritas, a great conversations with a room full of 100 plus HR leaders, and we'll have our Hacking HR team as well. So please stick around. We'll drop the form at the end of the session and catch you all in the next panel and see you around.
Bye, everyone.
Hello again. Welcome to our final panel of the day here at the Total Reward Summit. I'm Sneha, Chief Event Strategist at Hacking HR, and I'm so glad you're here for a session that might not always get the loudest spotlight, but absolutely deserves it. So it's on the financial wellness, retirement, and security benefits. But here's the truth: when people feel financially insecure, they carry that stress with them into the meetings that they go, into the decisions that they make, into how they show up every single day at work. So, as organizations, if we're serious about total rewards, the financial wellness isn't just an add on, it's a core part of how we support our people, if you agree with that. Today's panel is about what's changing, what's working, and how we can design benefits that help both employees not just get by, but get ahead. So, here's a quick one for the chat as we warm up with our panelists. So, what's one word or feeling you'd love your employees to associate with their financial benefits package? Audience, please drop it in the chat. Let's see what themes are top of your mind. And now let's meet our amazing panelists joining us for this conversation. We've got a few amazing women on the stage. We've got Linda, Elise, and Lindsay. As we kick off, I'd love for each of you to introduce yourself and answer this one quick question: who you are, what you do, and if you could redesign one part of the traditional benefits package from scratch, what would it be and why? Um, could we start with Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Irwin. I'm the VP of Global Human Resources for Sage Parts, which is an Alvest company. So we have locations worldwide. And I think that the question was if I could redesign one piece of the benefit program. Was that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think one piece that I would redesign is, from what I've seen in my experience, a lot of the programs are very structured and they're the same and not tailored individually by employee, where they're at in their stage in career or in their stage in life. And I would really redesign the benefits to make them more personalized and understand that everybody's in a very different place. And when you offer sort of a standard package, you're always going to have a group of employees that it may alienate because it doesn't really apply to them.
And we've got Lindsay. Can we go with you?
Of course. Hi, everyone. Lindsay Garrido. I am Assistant Vice President of Total Rewards at Montefiore, which is a large academic health system in New York. I've been in human resources for over 20 years now. And when I think about financial benefits and something I would love to evolve and change, I couldn't agree more with Linda. And I think that a lot of times what we hear about is how can employees get money back in their pockets? How can they maximize their net pay and what is in their paychecks? So I'd love to see being able to spread that out across other benefits that you might not typically think about. How can we impact financial wellness and what employees are saving and having in their paychecks related to that?
Thank you so much. That was amazing. And we've got Elise here, and she is having a bit of a technical difficulty with the audio system. So I just wanted to confirm, Elise, are you able to hear us? I think not. So while she could connect with the issue, let's jump into our discussion for today. And I would go with the basic question of what does financial wellness really mean to your organization, and how has your approach evolved in the recent years? I would love to go first.
I'll be happy to go. So I think financial wellness in our organization, we really try to take a holistic approach and not think of the traditional finances like the 401k program. That's clearly a financial program that's structured for, long-term retirement. But there are so many other things, and we know that, financial stress causes employee turnover, absenteeism, low productivity. So for us, we look at it as any financial benefit that we look at or any financial program really impacting the business and really making a difference in our employee lives. So we think of financial wellness as even things like career mobility, promotions, job changes that might come with increased compensation. We think of financial resources as things like, supporting an employee who might be experiencing fertility treatments. Anything that could touch their lives that involves finances outside of the traditional programs like 401k.
I would add to thinking about financial health and wellness as part of our overall health. So for us, we also think about it holistically and knowing that very much so. Our financial wellness is very much connected to our physical health or our mental health as examples. If we're undergoing financial stress, there certainly are elements that our mental health could be affected. We could be dealing with anxiety or stress as an example. It impacts physical health as well if people can't afford certain healthy food options as an example, or getting important medical care that they need. So it's really important to understand that it's not just financial wellness on its own. There are so many interconnected components in relation to our overall health. So we always try to look at it through that lens.
Thank you so much. And I see Elise, but she's still coping up with the difficulty. So here is my question for Linda. So here is it. So you've led HR at a very global level. So with a workforce that spans multiple generations, life stages, and financial realities, how do you go about personalizing financial wellness benefits for such a diverse group, whether someone's just starting to pay off student loans or planning for a retirement? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it starts with an awareness, within the HR and even your leaders that may interact, your supervisors that may be supporting these employees, kind of coaching them that every employee needs, something different and not having the same program. I think understanding that we're now managing 5 or 6 generations, as you mentioned, that have very different priorities from trying to buy their first house to pre-retirement. They're getting ready to understand how to use their benefits. And so we kind of use a 3-tier approach. One is a foundation tier. There are some fundamentals that everyone needs. It may look a little different country to country, but they might need the same thing, when it comes to financial security and stability. So that kind of foundational approach to things like emergency savings programs, building some financial literacy, helping them understand what that means, and some core retirement planning. Again, it will look different country to country, from your traditional 401k programs to maybe some government benefits in other countries. But there are some things that are foundational that you can educate everyone on. And then second, really more a life stage tier approach, right? Understanding that if they're early in their career, they're probably more worried about things like student loan debt, student loan assistance, first-time home buyer programs, basic budgeting. It might be their first time out on their own trying to budget, a household and understand, rent or mortgages, things like that. If they're mid-career, they could be, responsible for dependent care. So talking to them about some dependent care programs, whether they're caring for, a young child or an elderly parent, they may be responsible for both. So really understanding that, helping them with some, maybe long-term goals that they have, but they're kind of mid-stage career. So it's time to maybe really think about those things like estate planning or advanced investment options. And then the pre-retirement tier where, they're really close to retirement and they're really starting to think about things like healthcare cost planning. Did I build enough into my retirement to plan for my healthcare costs that I'm going to have going forward? And then making sure that all of those are personalized, right? Giving them individual choices, options, and customization through your benefit programs to really understand what that looks like. We know that especially with a global workforce, the priorities are very different, even in how they facilitate some of those programs. There are some cultural nuances around things like debt, very different things, from country to country. But there are some fundamental pieces that everyone needs that we try to make sure that we build into the education as well.
Wow, thank you so much on that. And Lindsay, do you have anything to add on to that?
Sure, yeah, I couldn't agree more about the life stages. I think that's a really important lens to look at your benefits and resources through and think about, is there something available to employees and their family members depending on what life stage and life moment they might be planning for or in at the moment. And that's a great lens to look through to see where you might have gaps and where you can fill in those gaps with different programs and resources. And when you think about education and putting those resources out there, thinking about, okay, are we offering different sessions and trainings and whatever it might be across all of those different types of financial needs that might exist. We actually did an event in April for Financial Literacy Month. So we took that as an opportunity to really amplify our benefits and our programs and run a month-long event in conjunction with Financial Literacy Month. So we were very intentional to make sure that the virtual workshops that we offered, there was a calendar of events throughout the month, that those virtual workshops covered a wide variety of topics. To Linda's point, those who just need basic budgeting assistance and how do I start a budget, to those who might be trying to save to buy a home, and others who are trying to understand Medicare and what does that look like and how is that going to impact my income. So we were really intentional with setting up those workshops and the topics that were going to be covered. And it was also a great opportunity. We are very much on site and in person. So we also had an in-person component where we ran fairs and brought in some of our vendor partners to be face-to-face with employees, and they had an opportunity to stop by and engage with them and ask questions and just continue to drive that awareness of all that we have available for them.
That's incredible. And here's one follow-up question on this particular topic from the audience. Do you offer financial literacy, and do you provide these benefits for the entire family?
We do offer many of our benefits and resources to family members as well. So they have access to, for example, our EAP program, and we have counseling and one-on-one sessions available through that benefit, open to family members as well. We have a pretty robust EAP program. We also have trainings that are delivered through our EAP, and so they are welcome to join those sessions. And some of our other benefits as well are open to family members to take advantage of.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Linda, do you have something to add on to that, or?
Yeah, I was just going to say I fully agree. We do the same thing. One thing that's a little bit different is we're a very distributed workforce. So a lot of our education, seminars, talks that we give are done via Teams or a remote platform. We do record those and send those out afterwards. So if employees want to share those with someone in their household or a family member, they're welcome to. It's all education. So that's another way they do that. And I was going to second the EAP program. A lot of people overlook that one when it comes to financial wellness. They really focus on the counseling part, but we have an EAP program in several countries that has a pretty robust financial wellness component, even some basic budget calculators in it. So we really try to make sure that we educate so that everyone understands what that program is. It's free, and that also is available to not only employees, but their dependents or their household members as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting us know about that. And Lindsay, as someone overseeing Total Rewards, you've likely seen how even great benefits can go underused if employees don't know what's available to them. So what are some of the most effective ways you have found to connect employees with the financial wellness resources you already offer?
Absolutely. I think it's so important to make it a constant conversation. So whether it's financial benefits or any other benefits, that it's something you're communicating and sharing all throughout the year, not just when someone starts employment or during annual open enrollment. So we try to do that through a monthly newsletter, our on-site fairs, communications that might be in conjunction with a certain awareness month. As I mentioned, we did the Financial Literacy Month event. So you can tie it into things that might be going on. So for example, end of summer, employees with children might be preparing for them to go back to school. There's costs involved with that. Can you do a communication in conjunction with back to school time and reshare some resources that might be helpful to your team members? And also, I think it's really important to make sure that resources are available to employees self-service. So they don't have to ask you about them. They don't have to ask you what's available. They can find resources on their own. Sometimes employees might not be comfortable to have to ask what's available, whether it's financial related, maybe mental health related. So I think it's so essential to make sure that those resources are front and center and available so people can access what they need. Another great opportunity for us has been educating managers and also our HR business partners. So making sure that they're informed about some of our benefit programs so that when they're in the moment with an employee, we might not interact with that employee, but they are. And so if they come across an issue or something that someone's navigating, they have it in their mind, oh, well, we have these benefits that might be really helpful to you. So running sessions with just them to make sure that they're aware of what's involved and available through some of the benefits, I think has been really, really important and helpful.
Awesome. And that brings to me a very related point. So even when great financial resources are in place, engagement can sometimes be a very challenging task. So, what strategies have you seen work well in actually getting employees to engage with financial education or the planning tools? And most importantly, use them consistently. So, what's that you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'll share one thing that we're doing that we actually just have recently started is, we do a lot of those same things, right? Lunch and learns or, hour-long training sessions, things like that. But what we have found is if we do those, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever pace we're at, that kind of loses traction in between them. And so we have an internal company-wide Microsoft Teams channel. So putting quick prompts in there, because what we found is depending on the employee and their learning style, a quick prompt sometimes is more engaging to them than maybe participating in an hour-long seminar. And so those quick prompts of something as simple as, did you know that our EAP program has some financial support? Here are 3 places that you can locate, the access information, just as kind of constant reminders of the program. To make sure that and I couldn't agree more with Lindsay, making sure that it's self-service so that they don't have to come and ask. That can be a difficult, conversation. They may feel like they need to tell you why they're asking, even though they don't, things like that. But those quick prompts of reminders through something as quick as a Teams, channel chat that they don't necessarily have to respond to or take action. It just kind of keeps it at top of mind. We have found really engages people. And then we do watch our engagement score, if you will, with things like our retirement programs in terms of monitoring. We of course can't see confidential information, but we can see the number of logins, how many people are changing their deferrals from month to month. Do we see that increase right after a training? So it kind of tells us, was that training effective? Did they really go in? We also have started measuring that with those prompts. Do we see an increase in engagement after we put one of those prompts out in the Teams channel so that we can see what their return is? Are people engaging with that?
I agree. And we also have found some success with some traditional methods. For example, we just did a postcard mailing to the home of employees for our EAP, and we saw a surge of utilization following that postcard mailing. So I think it's important to think about different vehicles and methods of communication. And to Linda's point, there's not just one method that works for everyone. Some people want to just click on something themselves and access it. Some people might need guided support. Some people want to attend the 1-hour sessions. And so that has been important for us as we think about our communication strategy and how we're sharing things. And I think another element that's been important is storytelling. So not just saying, for example, that we have one-on-one sessions available, or that there's a financial wellness checkup tool that you can utilize. How would that benefit the employee? What does that mean for them? What can they use this tool for to help them in some way? It might seem obvious, but a lot of times it's not. So making that connection to what some of the benefit programs and tools can actually do and how they can help. And a lot of times I don't think that it's as obvious as we think it is. And also think about that broadly. A lot of times we don't think about our voluntary benefits, for example, as financial benefits, but they absolutely are. So if you're offering accident insurance, hospital indemnity coverage, for example, those are financial wellness benefits. They help employees protect their income and provide a sense of security if they navigate something unexpectedly. Even during open enrollment, that's a key decision point for employees. And yes, they're making their plan decisions, but that also has a financial impact on their take-home pay. And do they have the right tools and resources to help them make those decisions?
That's amazing. I couldn't agree more. And while we are on the topic, when we talk about the financial wellness, it's not only about today's paycheck. It's about the long-term security that we all know. And for most people, it means the retirement. So the retirement sometimes, it can feel like distant, an abstract goal, especially for these younger employees or for those who are just trying to stay afloat financially. So my question is, how are you helping employees think about retirement, not just as a far off milestone, but as something they can feel very confident and supported in planning for right now?
I think education is really helpful. And again, I think it's going a little bit deeper in how you communicate it. I know for me personally, sometimes if you hear something, oh, if you only put in $100 a month by X date, it'll equal this. And then I pause and I say, oh, wow, that seems pretty doable. And that would be a great outcome to have. We're not really thinking that far out, but just having that resource and guidance to help us understand how what we're saving can really grow over time and why it's important, I think really helps with that communication and having different resources available that connect with people in different ways about retirement. So again, knowing that there's no one method that's going to work. And then we have one-on-one complimentary sessions available through our retirement plan administrator. We try to drive utilization to that all the time because that's where people can have personal, customized conversations and really understand it for themselves and have a conversation that applies for their particular life and how they can save towards retirement.
I would just add to that, I think all of those are excellent points. I could not agree more. Education really is the key to helping them understand that. If you have a retirement platform that does scenario planning, okay, if I start now, how much do I need if I want to retire at a specific age? I think a lot of times, especially people in their entry to mid-level career are quite surprised at how much money you would actually need in retirement to sustain retirement at the same lifestyle that you're used to. And so those scenario planning of, okay, if I start now, what does that look like? If I wait until, I'm, whatever the age is, what would that look like? And kind of do that scenario planning we're very fortunate. We have great platforms that it's very engaging platform, and they can kind of, play around with, okay, if I put 1% in, 2% in, what does it do to my take home pay? Helping them understand the tax benefits of retirement plans. A lot of time people forget about those, right? Whether it's pre-tax, what that looks like, what it really means in your pay, that 1% or 2% or whatever the amount is. If you can kind of go through those scenario planning and make it really almost a fun illustration of, here's what I could have if I start now. Here's what I would have if I start, if I start later and I have to do catch-up contributions. That might be a little bit more painful in my pocket than starting small now. So really I couldn't agree more with Lindsay. Education is the key, and there are lots of ways to do that, lots of modes to do that.
This is turning out to be such an interesting topic and conversation. I can agree that. So we've been talking about the long-term planning, but on the flip side, a lot of employees today are also focusing on right now or the short-term financial support. So are you seeing a shift in what employees are asking for, like more interest in the short-term financial support, such as the emergency savings or the student loan repayments or budgeting tools over the traditional retirement perks? So do you think, is this a generational trend or just a reflection of the current economic moment?
I think it's definitely related to current times. I think we are seeing a different focus of employees, to your point, on short-term financial needs and goals. And we are currently looking at, for future benefit offerings in some spaces. We are looking at student loan assistance and support, forgiveness, so programs related to that. We are also doing some discovery with earned wage access and looking at those type of benefits. So forward thinking, that's some of what we're potentially looking at, which I think would help in that regard of the short-term financial support and more directly impacting what employees might be dealing with today and how can they get more money in their pocket. And also amplifying some other benefits that we have that kind of sit on the shelf and collect dust but are valuable. So one of them that we have, for example, is a benefit that allows employees to purchase household items and pay it off over time through their paycheck. So there's no credit check, there's no interest, but it allows them to purchase something that might be a little bit larger of an expense. Maybe they need a laptop for their child for school. Maybe something happened and they need to purchase an item for their home, but they don't really have the cash immediately available to make that purchase. So even benefits like that can be important to, again, amplify and really drive that awareness for.
And I would say I agree. I think it's probably a combination. I think you sort of part of the question was, is it maybe a generational trend? Is it maybe due to the current economic climate? But I think it might be a trend of both. But I'm definitely seeing it increase, not only with short-term financial support, but also hardship support situations. So hopefully through financial wellness and education and literacy, we can kind of avoid some of those hardship situations. One thing we do is if short-term financial support is really the focus and the goal, I'm seeing that more with people maybe more entry level in their career, tying it to long-term retirement. So, if they can take advantage of a student loan assistance program that reduces that burden, that puts more, take-home pay in their pocket, they use part of that to also invest in their future retirement? So if I have more money over here in my take-home pay because I've eliminated this burden, can I use at least part of that to maybe add to, my 401k or my long-term retirement plan? So kind of tying the two together if their focus is on, short-term support.
That was wonderfully said. As we know that more companies are currently investing in the financial wellness and the retirement plans. In your experience, what's that one common mistake companies tend to make when building out these programs, and what would you suggest doing differently?
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes is something that we've kind of talked about in this panel is maybe a one-size-fits-all approach or kind of traditional benefits, and maybe not educating the employees enough to how it ties into their overall wellness. We've mentioned it a couple of times in this panel that, you know, financial wellness really impacts holistic wellness, their mental their mental health, their physical health, their ability to, to do their job and have a high productivity. And what I see a lot of companies focusing on is maybe the traditional benefits, advertising that they have 401k in this match, but maybe not really helping employees understand the total wellness. As Lindsay has pointed out very, very, very well, a lot of the other benefits we have, we might even roll them into and think of them as, our health benefit package, like disability insurance and things like that, but helping employees understand how that really is a part of financial wellness, that security, knowing that you have some income if, this event occurs, really is part, financial wellness, and they really maybe not understanding that. So I think companies, really could do a better job of maybe personalizing the benefits, as we've talked about, tailoring it to the different career stages that employees are at, and really helping them understand how anything that's a financial wellness piece of your benefit program really is a part of your overall wellness, and helping them understand that that's what the company is really supporting.
And bring that into the conversations. So it's easy to talk about one benefit or one thing that might be going on, but how can you interweave financial wellness benefits into conversations, or as different topics come up that might seem, seem on the surface unrelated to our financial health, but maybe they're related. So it could even be including information when someone goes out on a leave of absence, or if someone is in open enrollment and talking about the medical plan. There are a lot of opportunities to bring this into conversations more than we realize and we think. I also would just add to, it's important to understand what your employees need. We can always share amongst each other as peers what we're doing, what's important to us, what we're focusing on. But it's important to really try as best as possible to understand what your employees in your organization might need and might be dealing with. It's tough to get that information sometimes, but there can be points of data that are really key for us, for example, and again, it's all aggregated, it's confidential, but they're high-level data points that help inform us where we might need to expand some of our offerings. So for example, it's looking at the EAP. What are the high-level topics that people are inquiring about and utilizing the EAP for? We do see some are coming in for financial and legal concerns. When we look at our retirement plan and we dig into the data, for example, we notice that loans are higher and they're actually above the benchmark. So there's been sort of a little bit of surge of people taking more loans. So those type of data points can help us when we think about, okay, how do we need to, going forward, maybe look at resources differently, look at our communications differently, amplify some messaging to really help what people are navigating in the current moment.
Thank you. We've covered a lot with the financial wellness and also the mental health and stress support as well during the entire panel. So I would like to shift the focus a bit to the technology or the AI. So what role is technology or AI playing in how you deliver, personalize, or evaluate your financial benefits offerings?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm seeing is even in the platforms that we already use, like our 401k platform, our EAP platform, some of that, the technology is increasing to make it more engaging, to have an AI component where the employee can maybe interact with the system a little bit more than it just being one-sided information. I think in the future, as we kind of look forward, I think you'll see more of that, and maybe more of a predictive intervention, these programs being able to see what people are looking at, what they're engaging with, if they're using, a retirement simulator, what looks like they're spending the most time on in the system, to be able to, provide them with some suggestions of how they can improve their own, financial wellness going forward. I think a focus on it being a holistic wellness approach is, definitely a trend that I've seen changing, and I think that will just continue. To be viewed as something that, this, whatever the wellness platform is, it's going to, serve their overall wellness, piece. But I think AI is going to play a big part, as it is in all areas of HR, right? I think it's going to play a big part going forward in how we educate employees on, retirement, security benefits, all of those things, and really help the employee engage a little bit more and understand their own, needs, their own circumstance, their own scenario, to be able to be a part of that planning. Up until now, I think 401k especially has been a lot of, here's some information, here's how much you should contribute. You might have an auto escalation of, increasing benefits, and maybe the employee doesn't understand. They just know it's something that's going to be there whenever they get ready to retire, but don't really understand how to use it. I think AI will certainly change that going forward.
Can't agree more. And Lindsay, do you have something to add on that? Or
we are exploring technology at the moment and really excited about some of the capabilities that are going to be out there. I think I mentioned before, if a question comes in about one particular benefit or one particular need, and how AI, if it's an assistant within the technology, as an example, that can respond, but is also, again, mentioning other benefits that the employee might have initially asked about. And so again, it's increasing that awareness to everything that's available, or something that the employee may not have initially thought about, but it's able to kind of share those resources and bring that front and center. We've seen some of general statistics that those AI tools also help when employees have questions, and it's sort of outside of working hours, or our team might not be available to support them. It's able to answer questions in real time and provide that information to employees. So that's been really interesting. And just overall technology, are we maximizing it as much as we can to be efficient, reduce administrative work, and just leverage it to make sure that we are communicating and bringing that awareness to the benefits. Also, a decision support tool, for example, and some of the technology solutions that we've seen, there's that decision support tool that can be embedded in your benefit enrollment process, and it helps the employee to understand different options that are available to them. What are the differences between the plans? How does it change from a cost perspective? Even in the enrollment process itself, the technology that's available to help them through enrollment, if they want a really guided process, and it asks them these questions about how much they spend in a year on medical expenses, and where are they in their retirement plan savings, and a whole variety of questions that helps them make the right benefit choices for them in that enrollment process. So I think it's really great, some of the tools and technology that are out there and are only going to continue to grow.
thank you so much. You ladies were wonderful and exceptional. So I think we've got a lot of ideas and takeaways to our audience in the chat. And there are a lot of perspectives that they are putting forth in the chat box as well. As much as I feel bad to close up the panel, but we are at time. So before we wrap up, I would go with a quick closing question for both of you. So what's one thing you wish more companies understood about financial wellness, and one small step they can take tomorrow to improve it?
I can start. I think it's that you don't always have to invest a lot of money to offer financial wellness benefits and expand what you're offering. I think a lot of times it's easy to look at it from a cost perspective, but there really are a lot of tools and resources available that, as the employer, don't really cost us that much or anything at all. Another aspect is also digging into your current vendors and your current solutions that you have in place. A lot of time, there's other benefits and resources that are available that you might not even be aware of, or that no one's been talking about. And a lot of times there's so much more that we can share that many don't realize. I remember a couple organizations ago, it was our disability benefits carrier, and they offered free one-on-one financial coaching. There was a whole benefit program available that wasn't being communicated, wasn't being shared. So just want to amplify that message to everyone to really work with your current partners and see what options exist.
I couldn't agree more with everything that Lindsay said. And I would add to that, and Lindsay mentioned it earlier, really that personalization and asking employees what they want. I think a lot of times companies, have these standard benefits, or they roll out, a benefit strategy, and really maybe don't understand what employees want, understanding the utilization of those benefits. If they're not using them, is it because it's not important to them? Is it because they don't understand it? Is it because there wasn't enough education about it? Really understanding the benefits that you offer, why you're offering them, are they valuable to the employee, and really listening to the employee, whether that's listening one-on-one, whether that's doing surveys, whether that's using some data that these platforms provide. And for me, globally, understanding that we're looking for globally consistent outcomes. So again, everyone might need the same financial security, but understanding that local flexibility and how you deliver it is going to be important. Understanding the nuances of the region someone's in, the country someone's in. But you can even tailor that to individual countries, right? The role that they're in, the stage of their career that they're in. All of that really comes down to personalization of these benefits, and making sure that, this financial wellness, a lot of times you hear financial wellness and you really only think 401k retirement planning or, pension planning, if that's, in your area. But it really is, as you've heard on this panel, a very wide range of things.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of this panel. And I've personally learned a lot from this particular panel. And I'm really happy that I have been moderating this particular panel. Loved it. And a huge thanks to you, Linda and Lindsay, for your insights and really honest perspectives. And to all our amazing audience, thank you for sticking with us, asking great questions, and putting forth your perspectives in the chat. We are addressing each of them and looking into it. And please do feel free to reach out to our panelists if you do have any questions or follow-up perspectives that you'd like to share with them. I think they are open to it. And we hope you're walking away with real actionable items and you take back a lot of to-dos and something that your team and bring more security, support, and peace of mind to your people and your teams. And please do stick around for our last panel of the day. We've got few amazing panelists that are going to be up in the next panel, along with our crazy and our favorite moderator, Frank. So he's going to take it.
All right. Well, welcome back. And for those that were with us earlier today for the kickoff of day 2, no, you're not seeing things. I'm back again as your moderator, Dr. Frank Gonzalez, pronouns he and his. Just call me Frank, or don't call me late for lunch, dinner, or any good time for connection. I'm a people and culture leader with 2 decades of cross-industry experiences in data-driven designs, inclusive initiatives, talent, organizational development. But today, you are not here to see me, and the excitement's not about me. It's about our upcoming panels that we'll bring up shortly. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and serving as your moderator today. I want to thank again Hacking HR and Hacking HR community as we round out day 2 and get into day 3 tomorrow. Our panelists that were coming up and the exciting insights that they're going to provide. And then, of course, you, our audience members that either it's your first time or you've been dialing in with us today and yesterday and been with us throughout the journey. You know that these experiences are always jam-packed with a lot of things. So I want you all to connect, take the time to connect via LinkedIn, share contacts, share out some energy, put out the emojis, throw some questions. We'll do our best to moderate and potentially curate and surface any themes that might be going on. Today, this theme for the round out of day 2, oh my gosh, non-monetary rewards and recognition programs. Let's bring up our panelists. Love it, love it, love it. Want to see the smiling. Oh, yeah. Oh, and I think we're getting a little bit of feedback. There we go. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so as we are getting excited, and earlier today I did kind of clockwise on who I see first. So today I'm actually going to go counterclockwise and start over here with you, Kirsten. But I'd love for us to kick off this conversation, a very meaningful conversation, I think, for a lot of us, because money is one thing, compensation, development, title, obviously the rewards go, hand in hand with the work that we put in, right? But there's so many other things to be said about the non-monetary rewards and recognition. So I'd love for you all to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you said yes to this panel, why it's important for you now and in the future.
Well, thank you, Frank. I'm passionate about this particular subject. I'm actually passionate about all of the subjects that you just mentioned, but this is an important part of the equation, and I feel that it's the one that's the hardest to quantify. It's the one that brings that true feeling of belonging and meaning to the equation for the employees. And so it's one that I'm always thinking about in a very creative way. I'm exploring, and I feel needs to be very much tailored to the people that you're working with. So I'm passionate about it, and that's why I'm here.
You see that you can go next if you can.
Hi everyone, Isida Kalushi. Yeah, so I was really excited when I got the invite from Hacking HR. This topic is really dear to my heart. I think employee recognition, both monetary and non-monetary, is a very strong strategy driver of employee performance engagement in the workplace. And so the more we accelerate the recognition piece in the workforce, the better results we will receive. The other reason why I decided to join is because I think we live in such a virtual, digital, transactional world that sometimes the recognition piece is missing and employees do not feel valued, seen, and the purpose is missing. So I think it's super important to make sure to bring that back into the workforce.
Absolutely. Welcome, my friend. Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I think why actually resonates quite strongly with what Kida said. I hope I got that correct. So this topic for me, really, it's about humanizing the workforce, really. So that's, like she said, there's a lot of change that is going on around us, whether you look at it from hybrid work, whether you look at it from the generational shifts that are happening within the workplace, you look at it from just also the digital transformation that is going on. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact that people actually are the ones who drive strategy, who drive delivery. So I feel like non-monetary rewards and recognition is really bringing that human back into the workplace. It's really about reinforcing culture. It's about reinforcing values so that people find purpose in what it is that they do, and they can bring the best versions of themselves to the workplace on a day-to-day basis. And doing that also, they are growing themselves. So that's really my why, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
And we're looking forward to it too. Dr. Tracy.
Hey, you all. So glad to be here together and have this dialogue. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase. My PhD is in the sociology of work, how we affect our work, how it affects us. I've written a couple of books. The most recent is called The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and I am a senior contributor with Forbes and Fast Company. And I have been in HR and in lockstep, side by side with HR for a couple of decades, maybe longer than I really care to admit. And this topic, I think, is so interesting and critical because, you know, work has a really bad name today. I think we're kind of in this narrative about work is negative, work is a grind, work is something nobody wants to do. And I actually think it's really, really critical that we rewrite that narrative, re-speak that narrative, rethink that narrative, because work can be a really, really positive experience. We're contributing our talents and our capabilities, and recognition is a really big part of that. I know we'll talk later about, you know, what gets in the way. But when we are putting forth really great effort and we're motivated by what we're doing, and then somebody notices and cares and appreciates our work, that's really, really a positive recipe. So I just think we have a great opportunity to influence in another direction. So that's what got me interested, and really excited to be here with you all.
Yeah. Audience, if you can't tell, look at the genuine smiles and the energy and the empathy, the humanization that's just being projected. Can you feel that? Because I can feel it. And I'm not just saying that, I can feel it right here. And I see a lot of affirmations. Yeah, right? I see a lot of affirmations on the comments, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's either Eliza or Lisa, just saying achievers, employee here. Recognition is key to culture, period. Connect with me. I like that. We'll connect with you, right? Recognition is the most underutilized tool. Ooh. And I want to highlight that comment from the chat, because I think that's the key right now. You know, Kirsten, you mentioned something about it's one of the hardest things, like tangible things to measure, right? But maybe not. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that business impact around this. And Dr. Tracy, I'd like to stick with you, and we'll kind of go clockwise this time.
Yeah, the business impact of recognition is just huge. I was actually, I've written a couple of articles on it based on some research. I just really love to kind of start with some of those quantifiable data points. And I think about it too as kind of a culture of gratitude. And thinking about a bigger picture of the culture that we're building, which I know we've all spoken to. But when one study says that people are 134% more likely to stay, even in the face of a 10% raise at another job when they have great recognition. They're 186% more likely to give us a positive rating on an NPS score, a Net Promoter Score. It also, great recognition and appreciation have been linked quantitatively to better health and less headaches and less sleep problems, like real stuff that's measurable, right? Like non-monetary may feel a little more squishy, but we can actually look at those outcomes. And here's the big one. This is from Gallup and WorkHuman. There was a co-study that they did. People were 46% less likely to leave in that study. And this is the kicker for me. 55% of people said they didn't get enough recognition. So we have this gap, right? Like, wow, we know it's really important, but we're maybe not doing it enough. So how do we and I think our opportunity to realize the business benefits and to realize the people benefits, the personal benefits, the individual benefits, is to really move forward in creative ways with lots of opportunities for different kinds of people to get recognition, because we value recognition differently. Like some people don't want to be pulled on a stage and have applause from an auditorium full of people. They want a quieter, right? Exactly. They want a quieter approach. And some people appreciate extra time or extra vacation or extra, I don't know, other kinds of perks. Some people just want to be recognized more quietly. So I think it's critical that we look at the individual and what recognition looks like for them, and then to be really, really specific in how we recognize based on their preferences.
Love it. Thank you. Carol, anything to add or build?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tracy, for sharing that. And I think there's a lot of data out there that actually speaks to how sometimes we think that non-monetary recognition and reward programs are sort of intangibles, but like Dr. Tracy said, it's something that you can really hold on to. So if you do look at some of the data that is coming up from employee engagement surveys, you would find that one of the things that people talk about a lot is more around not feeling recognized. So you sometimes feel, okay, you're doing a lot of all these other things. You're doing your sport bonuses, you're paying performance bonuses, but employees still go back to the fact that they don't feel recognized. And at the root of that is really about what it is that happens on a day-to-day basis. It's really about the daily habits that leaders build in the organization, which really takes it back to the culture conversation. So it's really the way we do things here. So non-monetary rewards and recognitions provide that platform really for leaders to recognize employees on a day-to-day basis, on a daily basis, as it were, and also a lot in terms of personalization as well. So something I as a person may appreciate a thank you note, some other person may want you to send a mail or have a big shout out at a town hall meeting. Those are just examples, but also recognizing and helping leaders also see, how do you recognize what's a motivator for someone who's in your team? And it's not necessarily the same thing for everyone. Sometimes when we think about that, we also think about scalability, but it's not as complex, I guess I would say, as we would think it to be, because it's really about getting each leader within the organization, within their own small teams, personalizing and helping people feel recognized, feel valued, and find purpose in what it is that they do. And again, if we bring in the generational conversation as well, if we look at the different groups of people, a Gen Z would want to be appreciated very differently from someone who's from Gen X or for someone who's a millennial. So it's also understanding those nuances as well. And from a HR perspective, as HR practitioners, providing those toolkits to line leaders who interact with employees on a day-to-day basis to equip them with the tools that enable them recognize their team members. So that, I think I'd just add that to the conversation for now. Thank you.
No, thank you, my friend. Thank you. Isia or Kirsten?
Yeah, I totally agree with both Dr. Tracy and Carol on what they just shared. In order for it to be impactful and meaningful and purposeful, I think it's really important to understand what are the drivers and motivators behind each individual employee. And only then we can customize our recognitions based on what truly they value. So I think it's important for managers to take the lead on this, and it really is a leadership skill to be able to understand what motivates your employees on a day-to-day and offer those customizable rewards to them.
So a couple of things. One is, if you've heard of the 5 love languages, there's also the 5 languages of appreciation. And similarly, as humans, we understand all of the languages, but some resonate more for us than others. And so sometimes you need to hit multiple spots, and whichever ones resonate for certain individuals versus others, you're at least covering most or all of those bases. But in addition to really thinking about the personalized and individualized element, one thing I just want to highlight is I think group recognition and group rewards are also very good for the culture. So not only, I mean, for us and in the business that I'm in, it is the most collaborative culture. It is essential for us to collaborate to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And so everything that reinforces that, everything that recognizes a team, even if you're calling out individuals and their contributions within the team, but gives that overall team recognition, I feel really reinforces that collaborative culture that we have and that we want to continue to thrive within the business.
Bam. Okay. Mic drop, maybe, perhaps. A lot said. And these experiences, I think you can fill pages, libraries, really, with the information and nuggets. And even if it's just like, okay, maybe I've heard some of these things before, it's framed a little differently, then that should hopefully, for our audience, you're not alone, right? So you're not lost in these things. Maybe there's something, because we started talking about culture. Maybe there's something that is not driving it. Asita talked about leaders and potentially maybe modeling that, right? Starting with them and their responsibility. Maybe there's some nudge that's not making it impactful yet. But at least you're not alone. But if not, then some of this information. And Carol, I want to kind of click on what you said. It doesn't necessarily have to be so complex either. I remember one of the most impactful things as a direct, even if we're leaders, we're always a direct to someone else, right? A senior leader, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember we just had a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. And randomly within my first 90 days, we were asked to fill out a bunch of information. And I was like, where are y'all going with this? Shoe size, shirt size, pant size. What's your favorite brand? Where do you like to shop? Da, 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 da. And it wasn't through any also cutting edge platform, but during random moments, they were very genuine though. They were very genuine, right? Birthdays, weddings, just celebrating, the birth of someone, caregiving, or when you're in a down moment too, these things would just show up from your leader who would just kind of like drop in it was with a personal note. And better yet, Dr. Tracy, you talked a lot about the research, and I like to geek out over research too. In hindsight, I think monetarily, we always like, okay, I'm compensated, and that is absolutely valuable. But keep in mind though, too, that short-term experience, there's also stress. There's a lot of research that, as you go up with that, it's the stressors, and you talked a little bit about the well-being, because that was also mentioned in a couple of the panels earlier today, and I believe yesterday as well. So, this piece also, I think, solves a personalization around just, am I seeing valued, heard? And this is the actualization around that. When you go into someone's office, and it's not all like the recognition rewards, but it's little random things like this. A rock. This rock represents an experience that I went to, and I still have it years later. It's a rock. It's a rock, right? It was like, the money's great and, helps pay, got to pay the bills, but this, the little things. And there's, not going to steal the thunder. There's, a story with that part 2 coming up, my friends. And looking at the chat, so much affirmation coming up. What's been able to help organizations? You all are starting to answer that. I'd love to deep dive into that in just a moment. And as we look at kind of transitioning, I'd love for us to talk about, the workforce expectations nowadays and going forward, the practical tips, what's worked, what can we, what are the lessons that have been learned, et cetera. And Asita, I'll actually start with you. You're the middle of my clock right here. I'll start with you, and we can kind of build upon. But so much affirmation right here, empowerment of employees. Timothy, I see you on there. And personal thank you notes. Yep. Yeah, I see you on there. Personal thank you notes. And I think it's also, what I'll say is, we're always so busy. Everything's measured in time and money in business, whether it's profit or not profit. So it's just that taking that moment to be genuine and really recognize someone, and very specific, by the way, of course. And see, what thoughts do you have about the expectations of the workforce now and moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's really important to make it, again, personable, meaningful, and customizable. Celebrate the small wins, celebrate a well-done job, and call it out. One thing that in my experience that I saw at my previous company, each of our departments and teams had monthly meeting. And in those meetings, they started with giving a shout out or a kudos to a peer that had gone above and beyond, completed a challenging project. And so that's how all those meetings got started. And I think it provided a positive energy. Also, I would want to highlight, make it inclusive, because sometimes if you're recognizing the employee voice does count. However, there are some that are more vocal than others. And so if you're just recognizing those ones, it could be seen as you're preferencing them or favoritism, and you don't want that either. So I think making it very inclusive for everyone, it's really important. That's just one idea that I had from previous experience with very simple calling out, shouting out, putting it on Slack. One that I really like, actually, also, it's a handwritten thank you note from the leadership team. I think that goes a long way because it is from top down, and if your leaders, through your managers or department heads, are being are in the loop of what you're contributing to the organization, and so getting a message from them, it's very meaningful.
Yeah, I think that personalization and customization is such a red thread in our conversation so far. There was this really, really great example. I coach a Gen Z, and he had just completed 1 year at a really large company. And they gave him this little booklet, small size, cool, interesting size. And then it was, of course, there was a letter from the CEO, and they had entered his name in the 2 open spots or whatever. And then you're kind of like, yeah, this is a form letter. They can just insert a name. Nice idea, but they just inserted the name. But then I kept looking through it, and there was a picture of his team. And then there was a little note from his own leader, and then notes from his own team members. So it was this really great mix of, we got a system for this, and we want to recognize the fact that you started with us and put in some time, but then there was a way to customize and personalize it. And I think, you were asking, Frank, about, low cost options or no cost options. I mean, giving people more control over their job content or the projects that they do or the time off that they have is a wonderful way to reward and recognize. Giving people access to a mentor that they might not automatically have had, or that they might not have taken the initiative for themselves, or giving them the opportunity to mentor others, right? Like, that feels really good when somebody says, we think you have something to offer to others beyond your job description, right? And then I think what is really smart is for us to think about both systematic and more serendipitous opportunities. Like, the expectations today for pay transparency and growth in a career, right? Lots of pressure today from new entrants to the workforce to say, I want pay transparency. Tell me what I have to do next. How do I progress? And so that clarity and transparency about all those steps is a great idea. And I think we want to pair that with more serendipitous rewards and recognition. And I love your point, Kirsten, about group recognition and reward, right? Like, we don't want to be the company where everybody wins, right? Because then it just waters down anybody. But also, we want to create systems where teams rise together and there is a payoff for collaborating. So I think one of the really, really important things about rewards and recognition is that we don't start with rewards and recognition. We start with, what does the company want to accomplish? What are the behaviors that we want from people? And then how do we reward and recognize in order to get more of those behaviors, right? So I think there's a really nice way to think about it in kind of a bigger picture.
Kirsten or Carol?
Sure. Carol, if you don't mind, go next. Okay. So I feel like one of the most, and I agree with what's been said, but building on that, one of the things that I think is extremely important is the intention behind what you're doing. And if you have ever read anything written by the Arbinger Institute, for example, The Outward Mindset, I highly recommend. If you're really looking at, there can be people who are outwardly nice, we're checking that box. Look, we have a great culture. Look, but is this a veneer? Is this the sort of like we're outwardly nice, but inwardly focused versus I care about you. I see you. I see what you're doing. I see the sacrifices that you're making. I see that it's challenging what we're asking you to do. And I see how you uniquely holistically you are the person that is doing this. And so the more you can focus on that and the person can read that that is your intention, the better. And so in terms of a very simple approach that I found quite effective is having a check-in meeting with someone for no other purpose but the check-in meeting. How are you doing? And especially when I'm visiting someplace I'm on a business trip, having a group of people that I want to meet with one-on-one and just be like, how's it going? How are things? What do you want to talk about? This is their meeting with me. This is not my meeting with them. And so having that access, whether that's someone who's a peer, someone who's at a higher level, a very senior level, I think one of the things that always really resonated for me as an employee was when the CEO specifically sought me out to see how I was doing as a human being. And then I felt like this person sees me. They don't just see the results of my work or hear about me from my boss. This is someone who actually sees me as a person. And so the more we can reinforce those actions, and in our organization, we have a somewhat formal approach of doing this on a certain frequency with the most senior leadership. But then in addition to that, wanting to really make that part of the culture and expand that where it's a much more regular practice across.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't. Yeah, thank you. I think that's so really. It's about the person, about the human being, really, and I guess I would say the humanness in the person. So it's seeing beyond the work that the person or the individual is doing, and just recognizing that this individual is contributing to the organization, and just being authentic about it. I don't think that there's anything. That beats that authenticity, as it were. So just to add, maybe I'll just add two things to what has been shared already. Something that I've seen that also really is helpful as well, and it's also something quite low cost, is peer-to-peer recognition. So we've spoken a bit about leader-led recognition as well, but peer recognition is also something that I've seen that is quite powerful, and something that is also really very impactful. And in most cases, it's something that is low cost. So it might just be a shout out on Slack, a shout out on your Teams channels that you do have. But just always having that connection back to what it is that the goals of the organization are, what it is the values are, and just people having those parameters through which they're able to recognize their peers is something that I've seen really work as well. In some instances as well, for projects, sort of having I would call it sort of like a leaderboard or something that people do recognize people within those teams is also something that I've seen that is so peer to, my summary really is that peer-to-peer recognition is also something to leverage. In some organizations I've seen as well, people do have maybe a small budget that it is that they can work with in terms of being able to have those peer-to-peer recognitions done. And that's also one way in which employees do get really motivated within the workplace, as it were. The second thing I think that is also important would be also around timing. And I guess that goes back to the conversation of don't try to over-engineer what it is that you're doing. Recognition is most impactful in the here and now. Don't necessarily need to wait for a big event. Or if someone does something really great, recognize the person, acknowledge what it is that the person has done, and celebrate the individual. So timing is such a crucial and important part, because sometimes you might be waiting to do something grand and you lose the moment, really. So those would be the two things that I would add to all that has been said here. Thank you.
Amazing, my friend. Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Tracy.
Yeah, I was just going to build. I had a boss that loved to write personal thank you notes, and we've talked about that. But he did this one little thing, which was the frosting on the cake. He gave everybody in the team a little packet of thank you notes, because he wanted this like thank you note thing to not be just him. And so, Carol, like you were saying, right, peer to peer, it was just this really great little message and so tangible. So lots of other examples we can share, but I thought that handing out a little pack of thank you notes was a very brilliant idea.
Love it. Carrying it forward. And of course, then peer recognition, absolutely valuable. I want to, panelists, we have, and yes, the times go by quick. We're at our kind of wrap at the end here. So I'm going to pose the question, and then I want to pull on some themes and recognize some folks on the comments here. But for our panelists, kind of a two-part question. In hindsight, looking back, what was an action, something that really, really resonated with you that you'd like to surface, that really made you feel seen, valued, heard? And then future state or future kind of looking, what is something that we should be looking out for, trends, etc., especially given our macroeconomic pressures? Organizations are like, okay, first thing they think is like, well, how much, that everything is driven at money and time, and they want to see the short-term things. And, what should we be looking at futuristically wise? So those kind of two things. I want to recognize Abigail in the chat, definitely just simply recognizing people's names. Oh my gosh. And just experiences. Absolutely. Whether it be 2 days, 2 years later, you come back and you say, how is so-and-so? What's going on with this? Oh, I saw you did this. What's going on with this? I tell you time and time again, I think we all have at least one experience. And if not, you will experience it when somebody can really pause and they'll literally tell you like, oh, you remembered? Absolutely. Just the humanization piece of it. And I also want to pull on something that Dr. Tracy, you always, again, the research piece of it, and I geek out over this stuff. At the end of the day, too, so when organizations are looking like, what do I got to do? Well, it's getting to know your organization. And as we really become an expert in our field, whatever function it is, at a 5 and 10 year mark, research tells us this is where we just want autonomy too, right? So that flexibility and recognizing that you don't necessarily need to direct me so much or delegate, right? You just need to support, encourage me. And I really love how you said about a leader, just encouraging that path forward. And Kirsten, I just want to double click on something you said at the very beginning, is that it's hard to quantify, but sometimes something as simple as when you start that meeting for no other reason to check in, but you can't quantify it. What's one word that describes how you're feeling right now, right? So it kind of funnels that emotion down or those thoughts down to one thing. And one thing that we've put into practice that I tried and then it carried forward is from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not so great, 5 being great. What's work feeling like right now? That's literally quantifying something. And so you can explore the unfavorable of 1 to 2, neutral of 3, And then really, okay, how do we keep the 4s and 5s going? And then also on a personal note, 1 through 5. Describe yourself on a 1 through 5 right now, personally. How are you feeling, right? Or how's it going? And that is a way to quantify it. That's social science right there at its most basic. Obviously, I won't say like, don't take those data results and then try to, make them empirical, etc. But that's a simple, simplistic way. I'd like to start with Carol. Since your name is the closest to the beginning of the alphabet, bring us out, round us out. And as we do so, I want to thank Hacking HR. I want to thank our audience for day 2. Tune in for day 3. This community is always bring a friend, recommend it to a friend tomorrow. I don't get paid to say that. I genuinely believe in the power of this community. So please and thank you. Carol.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dr. Frank. So I would say something, and I guess it's something that you said, so I'm probably going to sort of repeat what you said. I think one thing that if I think back at from a previous role, something that really did resonate with me was just really being seen. And I think someone had touched on it, and it's really about and I guess for me, that was recognition in the sense that I had the opportunity to function necessarily, or to function to the best of my abilities in my role without necessarily, and being given that autonomy to run the space I had to run. And be able to make decisions, fail sometimes, and even in failing, knowing that the leader that I had was there to hold my hand and say, this is the way to go, without necessarily making it so obvious. So again, it's really, for me, it was really about that, just autonomy and just being able to express myself, just be myself in the workplace, as it were. That's something that I think, and I guess that connects as well with the humanness of each person. And it's really, again, about recognizing that people are different. So what makes each person tick could differ from person to person. And it's also just understanding that as the leader, and structuring what it is that you, or how it is that you engage with the employee differently. I guess that's going back to the personalization conversation. So that's just in terms of just reflecting from prior to this time. If I were to think about something that I think we can do as HR practitioners that would really be scalable, is just build in terms of building that culture of appreciation. I would share 2 things, and I'll do it very quickly because I see that we're sort of running out of time. The first thing would be just a simple question of what are you grateful for into start of meetings. And I think that question is quite a very powerful question. And in gratitude, in terms of people sharing what it is that they're grateful for, they then in turn also share in terms of colleagues and all of that, what's happening. And that in itself helps people just reflect, because we're sort of always so busy sometimes that we don't pause really to think about the wins that we've had and all of that. The second thing that I would share as well, that I think is something that is powerful, that we can try out, would really be, I guess I would call it maybe ripple recognition. So it's kind of like I say something that I'm appreciative of Dr. Tracy about, Dr. Tracy says something she's appreciative of Dr. Frank about, and it sort of just goes around the team in that way, and connecting it what it is that a team is going, so you keep that alignment with goals and all of that. I think that that's also something that is powerful, that we can try out as practitioners. Yeah, thank you.
I can jump in with 30 seconds worth, making room for other people to finish as well. When I look back, it's hard to think of times I didn't get recognized, because those didn't have an emotional impact on me, right? They were missed opportunities. But I remember early in my career, one thing, my organization helped me pay for my next degree. And it was just a huge message about their investment in me and their investment in what they thought the potential I had was for the organization. And the other thing they did around the same time, they were recognizing the effort I had made, and they gave me a gift certificate for a weekend at a water park with my family. It was amazing. It was so personal. It was so custom. It wasn't hugely expensive. It was very doable. But the fact that it was different than what, like it wasn't just part of like, here's your pin or here's your pen kind of program. So those meant a whole lot to me. And I think it's back to that, like you're personal and you're really, really helping people to feel seen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. Again, I think it's about feeling seen and recognized for the good work or an impact you're doing. I would say looking back, I have had certain leaders who are better at this than others. And one of my old bosses actually, she was very good at recognizing, but she was also good at making sure that you were taking those breaks and you were not getting burned out. So she would really caution me about, I see you go above and beyond, but let's take a break when needed so that you don't burn out. And I think that's really crucial, especially in this time when people are working remotely and difficult to disconnect. So having a leader that is recognizing the efforts, but also making sure that you are still getting that time to disconnect and relax.
You mentioned in the question something along the lines of what had an impact on you as an individual. And I think for sure, anytime there can be an emotional reaction, emotion helps us really solidify a memory. And so whether it's an experience similar to what Dr. Tracy said, or really having a high emotional element to it. For me, I thought about this yesterday as we were preparing for this, and I received an award at an internal company conference, and it was a really big deal, this award. But what was the biggest deal for me that I don't even think the people who nominated me or gave me the award really realized is how much I was struggling at that moment. In this particular case, I had twins. I was having postpartum depression. I had imposter syndrome going on. I'd only been back for, so many months. And so I felt, I had all these things going on with me. And so to get some recognition of like, hey, we still value you. You haven't lost it. You haven't, you're finding your new way. But again, maybe they didn't see any of this. This was all happening inside of me. But I do think that with the timing of recognition, the frequency of recognition, and then also keeping in mind that when people do have these life events happen to them or have tough things that they are encountered with, I think someone put in the comments, just how you handle situations with people or be there for them in their hardest moments. To me, that's where loyalty really comes from. And so that's why that particular award stands out for me. It wasn't the only time I had public recognition. It was the only time I had public recognition when I was struggling emotionally and was so close to just wanting to give up.
Yeah, I know, Kirsten. Stay there for just a moment as we wrap up. Thank you specifically for your courage, and thank our panelists for your courage by being so transparent around that. I think we all like went like this at the same time, and I bet you online, I know there's folks like, whoa, they came back and like they were just about to click log out. But thank you for your courage and the courage of our panelists, because by your courage and transparency with these nuggets that you have spread out, you're also providing encouragement for others that they're not alone, that this is still something that's not just now, but in the future. I want to thank you all again. Go from poetry clap, but a big energy round of applause, alligator chomp. If you have an old ketchup bottle or condiments, trying to ketchup bottle clap right there. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience, for taking time for yourself today. And thank you, Hacking HR, again. Please tune in with us for the last day of the summit tomorrow. Thank you, and thank you all again. Be well, be safe, my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.